At my husband's funeral, my son, a young, wealthy businessman who's always in a rush, walked up to me with eyes gentle, yet distant. He squeezed my hand and said proudly, "Mom, I just want to make sure you're comfortable in the mansion I bought for you." I froze. My heart sank. What mansion? For the past 2 years, I've still been in the old 4B apartment, the one with peeling floors, a leaky roof whenever it rains, and I've been living on my husband's modest pension. My daughter-in-law stepped closer, a fitted black silk dress, expensive perfume overpowering the floral scent of the service. She smiled slightly, lips red as blood, but her eyes were cold and haughty. I knew that look, the look of someone who has taken what isn't theirs. And when I looked straight at her and calmly asked, "What mansion are you talking about, son?" Her smile stalled, frozen in a room suddenly filled with suspicious glances. She didn't know that just a few weeks later, that mansion would become the place where her reputation, her marriage, and the flashy life she built on lies would be buried. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. My name is Brenda Cole, 67 years old, widow of a man I loved for almost my entire life, Michael. We lived simply in a small apartment in Davie, Florida, where the hallway always smelled like morning coffee and you could hear kids playing. I wasn't wealthy, but I used to think I was happy because I had a steady family and a successful son people admired. But sometimes what hurts most isn't poverty, it's realizing you've been forgotten inside your own family. And that funeral where I should have only said goodbye to my husband became the day I realized the daughter-in-law I'd tried to love was the one who had taken everything. That morning, weak sunlight came through the funeral home's glass windows in Coral Springs, tinting the white ribbons on the wreaths gold. I sat in the front row, clutching an old handkerchief, the last gift Michael gave me before he passed. We had been together more than 40 years, sharing every pension check, every morning coffee, every sleepless night over medical bills. Michael was calm and steady, but always gentle in the smallest gestures. The day he left, I thought the hardest part of my life was over. Turns out, his funeral was the beginning of the deepest pain I've ever known. Andrew, our only son, stood near the main doors. A black suit hugged his shoulders, an expensive watch catching the light. At 35, he already owned a successful tech company in Miami, praised in the news as a self-made example of the new generation. I used to cry proud tears whenever I saw him on TV. But the more successful he became, the less he was home. Calls got shorter, visits got briefer, replaced by quick notes. "Mom, Serena will swing by to drop you some money for groceries." Serena, Andrew's wife, is the kind of woman who makes people look twice. Golden hair, a perfect smile, and a way of walking like the world should step aside. I tried to love her, the way American mothers-in-law do, look for common ground, compliment the pie she brought, try to believe she truly loved my son. But there are things an older woman can sense without proof. The look of disdain when she saw me use an old wallet. The way she said, "Mom," without ever really meeting my eyes. And now, in Michael's funeral, she stood by my son as if she were the one who had lost the most. She placed a hand on Andrew's shoulder, whispered something, and then, right in that moment, Andrew said the sentence that made the crowded room go silent. "Mom, I just want to make sure you're comfortable in the mansion I bought for you." I thought I misheard. A few seconds stretched as long as a lifetime. Then I answered, voice shaking, "What did you say, Andrew?" I've never lived in any mansion." Andrew frowned, confused. "What do you mean, Mom?" "The house in Coral Gables, the one I bought 2 years ago. I remember you said you loved the backyard." My chest tightened. "Coral Gables? I've never set foot there. For the last 2 years, I've still been in 4B, the old place in Davie where every morning I catch leaks with a plastic bucket. Serena cut in immediately, voice sweet but sharp as a blade. Mom must be confused. She's been forgetful lately, we've been worried. That line rang out clear, like she wanted everyone to hear it. I glanced around, some relatives looked at me, a few nodding with pity. I bit my lip and kept steady. I'm not confused, Serena, I said quietly. I remember every crack in my wall, every hiss in my pipes. If I truly lived in a mansion, I wouldn't be carrying a bucket every night to catch drips. The room went silent. Andrew looked at his wife, then back at me. Serena tightened her grip on her purse and forced a smile. Of course, Mom is just joking. But her eyes said otherwise, darting, startled then, narrowing into a quick, warning glance as if telling Andrew to keep quiet. I'm old, not blind. I know the look of someone hiding a secret, and Serena had just given it away. After the service, when most people had left, Andrew came over, still looking rattled. Mom, he said softly, maybe I should swing by the apartment soon. I thought you'd already moved. No, I'm still there, Andrew. I never left, and I never received any key except the key to 4B. I watched his face tighten. Something was cracking inside the son I've loved all my life. Behind him, Serena stepped up, voice smooth as velvet. Honey, it's your dad's funeral. Can we talk about this later? Mom's just emotional. I turned to her. Serena, I said, calm but firm. I've lived long enough to know when someone's lying. She pressed her lips together, eyes skittering away. Andrew squeezed my shoulder and murmured, Mom, let's get some air. But I didn't want to leave. I wanted this ended now. No, Andrew, I said. If you really bought me a mansion, I want to know why I've never lived there. Serena stepped back, a practiced smile returning. Mom, you're drawing attention. This is your husband's funeral. Exactly, I said slowly. That's why I don't want anything else to be hidden today. Aunt Lillian, Michael's younger sister, happened to walk by and heard it. She stopped, looked at us, then said gently, I just visited Brenda's apartment last week. She still lives there. I even brought her an apple pie. The air froze. Andrew turned fully to his wife, doubt now visible. Serena stood rigid, hands trembling just enough to make her pearl necklace quiver. I took a breath and kept my voice even. Son, I think it's time we talk in private, just the three of us. Andrew nodded and asked a funeral home staffer to open a small back room for family. When the door closed, I looked straight at Serena without blinking. Andrew pulled out his phone. Let me check the closing file. Maybe there's a mix-up somewhere. There's no mix-up, I said, low but steady. Someone has been living in that house. And I believe that person is standing right here. Serena let out a small, brittle laugh, the kind that sounds like breaking glass. Are you accusing me? I know you're hurting, I get it, but I'm not hurting. I cut in. I'm recalling every electric bill, every bank letter, every tax notice that all came to 4B. No one mixed anything up, Serena. Andrew exhaled, scrolling. Mom, here it is. The confirmation for the Coral Gables purchase, signed 2 years ago, recipient Brenda Cole. He paused. Mom, there's your electronic signature. I stared at the screen. That signature wasn't mine. The strokes were straight, stiff, missing the soft loop of my right hand. That isn't my signature, I said quietly. Andrew froze. Serena went pale as if the blood drained from her face. No one spoke for a few seconds. Only the hum of the vent and my heartbeat thudding in my chest. Finally, Andrew whispered, Mom, we need to review everything, including the bank records. Serena turned away, clutching her purse. This isn't the time, she muttered. But Andrew looked right at her, his voice no longer gentle. No, Serena, this is exactly the time. I knew, In that moment, things had started to break. And I also knew that although today was my husband's funeral, another funeral for the lies was being prepared right there in that small room. Andrew sat on the wooden chair by the small table in the family room. The soft yellow light showed the dark circles under his eyes, proof of many sleepless nights. The room smelled of polished wood and funeral flowers, making the air heavier. I stayed standing, hands clasped to keep them from shaking. "Let me show you," Andrew said, pulling out his phone. "Maybe you really forgot. I have photos." I looked at the bright screen. A woman stood in a large kitchen. Sunny light. A stainless steel fridge. A spotless white stone island. She wore a beige sweater and gave a slight smile toward the camera. From a distance, at a glance, she did look like me. Same short gray-streaked hair, a slim frame, hands laced in front. But the longer I looked, the colder I felt. I tilted my head and drew a breath. "Andrew," I said slowly, "that woman is not me." He frowned. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "She looks exactly like you." I pointed to the screen. "Do you see the small scar on my right wrist? I got it slicing apples in 1998. She doesn't have it. And here, I touched my own cheek. I have a tiny freckle on my left cheek. She doesn't." Andrew went still. He zoomed in, eyes scanning the details I named. His face shifted from surprise to confusion. He swiped to the next photo. "This one," he murmured, "in the find yard. Mom, that's the garden you said you loved." I followed his gaze. The woman stood by a blooming rosebush holding a watering can. Behind her, tall palms and a pale stone wall. I had never seen that place. "Son," I said, "I've never stood in any garden like that. I don't know that wall. I don't know those roses." He swallowed. He slid through more images. On a sofa in the living room, opening the garage holding a bouquet. Every shot was the same woman and none were me. The screen's light washed his face paler and paler. Across from us, Serena folded her arms and tried a thin smile. "Honey," she said, high and soft, "I think Mom's mistaken. It's a painful day, her memory might be jumbled." I looked straight at her. "Serena, I am still clear enough to tell the difference between a dream kitchen and my real one, the one with a refrigerator that roars every night and a light bulb that's been flickering since last year." The room seemed to refrigerator. Lock in place. Andrew's eyes flashed, for the first time, with doubt. "Serena," he said slowly, "who is the woman in these photos?" She jolted, lips parting without sound. Then, a thin, forced smile. "Not now. This is your father's funeral." "No, Serena." Andrew's voice was low and sharp. "Who is she?" I saw her throat twitch. The hallway outside had started to murmur. Some relatives must have heard a bit. The whispers slipped under the door like small waves. Serena tried to steady herself, her voice trembling. I don't think this is the right time. People are watching." I glanced at Andrew. "Son, if you really want the truth, there's no better time than now." He drew a breath and nodded. "You're right. We clear this up here." I sat, keeping my voice unusually calm. "Andrew, if you truly bought that mansion for me, check the basics, the name on the deed, the utility bills, and the door codes. I've never had any door code except opposite. The one for 4B? Remember? And every utility bill has gone to the same address for 15 years. Andrew turned to his wife. "Do you have the documents, Serena?" She gripped her purse and shook her head. "That's the broker's side. I don't keep them. But I'm sure everything's legit." Mom must be mistaken, really. I exhaled and set my hand on the table, voice steady but firm. "If there's a mistake, it certainly isn't mine. I know every pension dollar, every one of your father's medical costs, every bill I've struggled to pay." Andrew stared at his phone, breathing faster. I remember asking Serena to handle the move for Mom, he said quietly. You told me she'd already moved to Coral Gables and sent me photos. These photos. Serena rushed in. You said Mom asked me to e-sign for her. Remember? My head snapped up. E-sign? I have never signed anything I didn't read, and I don't recall asking anyone to sign for me, especially for a house you said was for me. Serena's face went chalk white. She edged back, scarlet lips trembling. You're misunderstanding. I only wanted to make things quick, you know. Andrew lifted his head. His eyes were different now, no softness, no trust, only the cool clarity of someone who has just realized he's been deceived. Serena, he said, each word dropping like a blade, tell the truth. You're living in that mansion, aren't you? The air turned to lead. I could hear the wall clock tick. Serena stood rigid, swallowing hard. Then, in a thin, cracked voice, she said, Yes, I'm living there. It felt like a punch to the chest. For a moment, all sound vanished. I only saw her lips move and my son's face drain. Andrew dropped into the chair, fists clenched around his phone. God, he exhaled. What did you just say? She stammered. I thought the house was too big for Mom. So I stayed there for a while she remained at the old apartment. I tilted my head, oddly calm. For a while, for 2 years, Serena? She stiffened. You're misunderstanding. Enough. Andrew's voice filled the small room. You've lied to me for 2 years? Serena stepped back, tears welling, but neither of us believed them. I sat still, hands in my lap, the cold spreading from my chest to my fingers. Something in me, something once soft, was cracking, not from despair, but from awakening. I looked straight at her and said, quiet and clear, Do you understand what you just admitted? You lived in the house my son bought for me, while I caught leaks and ate canned soup every night. She wiped at her eyes and forced a smile. Please don't make this bigger than it is. I just wanted everyone to be happy. Andrew's voice broke. What happiness is built on lies, Serena? Out in the hall, the murmurs swelled. I heard someone whisper, What's going on? And footsteps stop outside the door. I turned to my son. Andrew, I said softly, we can't let this slide. Check everything the house records, the transactions, and who actually holds the title. The truth doesn't fear the light. He nodded slowly. His eyes went back to his wife, now only tired and disappointed. Serena bowed her head, voice shrinking. I don't want to discuss this here, please, but I knew every plea was just a way to delay the unavoidable. Because the moment she admitted living in that mansion, the wall propping up their marriage cracked, and I knew it would all collapse soon. Serena stood silent for a few seconds after blurting out her confession. She seemed to realize she'd said too much. She straightened, smoothed her golden hair, and changed tone, trying to regain poise. I just thought, the house was too big for an older person, Mom. You're used to a small apartment. That mansion has too many stairs and it's far from the center. I worried you wouldn't adjust, so I cut in, not loud, but each word heavy enough to thicken the air. So you lived there in my place for 2 years? Serena pressed her lips together, eyes sliding away. I just stayed temporarily, to keep an eye on the house for you. Who knew it would be misunderstood like this? Andrew nearly lost control. He shot up, sharp in a way I'd rarely seen. Keep an eye on it? Serena, that's the house I bought for my mother. So she could feel secure in her later years, not stuck alone in that old, cramped apartment. Her heel clicked against the floor with a hard, dry sound as she stepped back. She wore a thin, paper-like smile. I know, but you said Mom likes her privacy. I was only doing what she wanted. My voice dropped. Privacy? Do you think privacy means isolation, lies, and having your home taken from you? Serena inhaled, trying to stay composed. Please don't misunderstand. I was afraid the move would be too tiring. So I told Andrew you didn't want to leave the old place. I remember you said you like your neighbors there, right? Andrew whipped toward her. Hold on. You told me Mom didn't like being visited, that she wanted to be alone, needed privacy. You said Mom asked not to be bothered because she was tired. I believed that for 2 years. The word believed caught in his throat. I could feel the hurt of a son robbed of the most sacred bond there is. I placed a hand on my chest to steady my breath. Suddenly everything clicked, like a puzzle I'd only seen in pieces. The calls Andrew said he was too busy to make, the Thanksgivings I waited alone, the postcards I sent that never got a reply. Turns out my son wasn't indifferent. Someone had built a wall between us made of sweet words, fake emails, and Mom said she doesn't want to see you. Andrew's voice was low but firm. You lied to me, didn't you? About everything? Serena bit her lip, face, still trying for coolness, but her eyes wavered. I don't think of it as lying. I just wanted things to run smoothly. I watched the conflict rise in her. Then, in the tension, she let out a line that chilled me. Because I could. Because no one questioned it. The room went dead quiet. Andrew stared, stunned. I felt the world stop. That one line, casual and arrogant, exposed who she really was. A woman who believed the greatest power is other people's indifference. Andrew shook his head, voice cracking. Do you realize what you've done? You stole 2 years of my life with my mother, years we can't get back. Serena tried to defend herself, eyes glassy. I didn't mean it. I just thought Mom would be happier not being bothered. You were busy, and I didn't want her to feel hurt that you had no time. I was trying to be kind. I let out a small laugh with no joy. Kind to who, Serena? To me or to yourself? She looked down and said nothing. Tears fell perfectly timed for sympathy. But I'm too old to be fooled by late tears. Andrew drew a breath and turned away. Pack your things and leave that mansion. As soon as the funeral is over, I don't want another excuse. Serena's eyes flew wide. She stepped closer, voice breaking. You can't say that. This is your father's funeral. People are outside. Don't make a scene. No, Serena. My voice was even and final. Precisely because this is my husband's funeral, I won't allow another lie in this place. She turned to me, trying to look fragile. Mom, please. Don't let Andrew lose face in front of the family. I stood, straightening my back, and spoke slowly. Today, the person losing face isn't Andrew. It's you because you chose deceit. Andrew sat, rubbing his temples. I saw both anger and shame in him. I was so foolish, he muttered. All this time I thought Mom didn't need me. I beat myself up for not being there. And it was you who orchestrated it. Serena sank into a chair, tears spilling. Don't say that. I was trying to keep the peace. Mom and we've never gotten along. I was afraid she'd wear you out. My voice softened but stayed cool. You know who was worn out? Not Andrew. Me. Worn out from believing my son had forgotten me. Worn out from thinking I no longer mattered to anyone. Silence stretched. I could hear rain begin to tap against the small window. I turned to Andrew and said gently, Son, it's time you check everything, the bank records, the mail, the messages you thought were from me. You may find more than you expect. He nodded, his eyes more resolute than ever. I will. I want to know how much of my life over the past 2 years was real. Serena reached for Andrew's hand, pleading, Honey, don't do this to me. We can talk later. Mom is too emotional, and so are you. I don't want us to say things that tear the whole family apart. Andrew pulled his hand back. Tear apart? You think it isn't already? You took my mother's trust and the bond in this family. What more do you want? I sat down, quietly watching, not interrupting. I knew any defense Serena made now would only expose her further. She wiped her tears and spoke softly. Honey, I just didn't think Mom would react so harshly. If she could accept that I only meant well, maybe Andrew cut in. Enough. My mother doesn't need you to decide what's good for her. Serena stood, inhaled, and put her cold mask back on. If you want to investigate, then investigate. I have nothing to hide. She said that, but I clearly saw her hands tremble. I turned to Andrew, my voice low but steady. Son, don't let this be forgotten. I don't want it to end with a fake apology. See it through, and let the truth speak for itself. He nodded, and placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that felt both like an apology and a promise. I turned to Serena with a slight smile. Serena, you can cry, you can play the misunderstood wife, but remember, tears don't wash away guilt when someone cries only to keep a mask on. Serena looked at me, anger flashing in her eyes, no longer contained. As for me, in that moment, I felt an odd calm. Maybe because I finally understood, this wasn't a family misunderstanding anymore. This was a fight to reclaim the truth. And this time, I would not step back. 3 days after the funeral, a light Florida rain fell. It was soft but persistent, as if it wanted to keep me in that old 4B apartment a little longer. I was making coffee when I heard a knock. When I opened the door, Andrew stood there soaked, holding a worn brown box. His face was tired, his beard unshaven, and his eyes red, but not from the rain. I brought this for you, he said hoarsely. It's what I found in the office at the mansion. I invited him in. We sat at the small dining table by the window, the spot where Michael used to read the paper every morning. The little room felt warm but empty. The dim light outside only managed to brush the faded wedding photo on the wall. Andrew set the box on the floor and opened it. Inside were a stack of envelopes, some files, and a black leather notebook. He bent down and pulled out the first envelope. I think you should see this first. I took it, a birthday card with a cream cover and a pink ribbon. The handwriting on the envelope was mine, from at least 3 years ago. To my beloved son, Mom. I opened it. Inside was a card that had never been unsealed, the flap still glued tight. My God, I whispered. You never received these cards, did you? Andrew shook his head, eyes down. Not a single one. There are cards from earlier years, too. I looked at the other envelopes in the box. 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, all in my handwriting, sent to Andrew's friend. Office address. All unopened. I placed my hand on one of the cards, feeling like I was touching a stolen piece of memory. Each one represented a year I sat alone in this apartment, writing to my son with love, waiting for a phone call that never came. I thought you were mad at me, Andrew said quietly. Serena told me you didn't want contact. She even showed me emails you sent asking me not to bother you. I looked up. Emails? I don't even know how to send emails. I only write by hand. He nodded. I know, and I printed all of them. He pulled out another stack, printed emails showing my name as the sender. The tone read like someone distant. Andrew, I need time alone. Don't call me too much. I feel tired. My hands shook holding the page. No, Andrew, I never wrote these lines. He clenched his fists, the veins rising in his neck. I know. Now I know. But before, I believed it. Serena said you'd changed, forgetful, moody, for no reason. She said you needed space. It felt like someone had just drained the air from my lungs. It turns out every silence over the years had been arranged by someone else. I reached for the last item in the box, the black leather notebook. It was thick, heavy, and smelled like old leather. Andrew said softly, "I found it in Serena's desk drawer. Looks like a personal journal." I opened the first page. The neat, sharp handwriting was Serena's. The first line read, "Plan to maintain balance between both sides, Brenda and Andrew." I swallowed. Andrew sat beside me in silence. I turned a few more pages. Each page was meticulous, like an operator's logbook, not a wife's diary. "Call Brenda. Tell her Andrew is busy and won't stop by. Tell Andrew. Mom said don't call. She's tired. May 12th, Brenda sent a card. Keep it. Don't forward. We'll say it got lost." I shuddered. Each line was a small cut, executed with chilling precision. Andrew stared at the notebook, his lips tight. "Turn to the middle," he said. I opened to a page with a small paper clip. At the top, written in red ink, "Mother's Day." Below was a detailed note, "Morning. Send flowers to 4B from Andrew, keep the message short. Call Mom, say he's in a meeting and can't talk. Evening. Cook dinner at home. Tell him Mom said thanks and doesn't want to be bothered. Goal. Make Brenda feel remembered but without needing to meet." I set the notebook down. My vision blurred not from age, but from tears rising too fast. I remembered last Mother's Day, the bouquet of roses I received, the machine-printed card with Andrew's signature, and Serena's call saying he was on a business trip. I believed it. I sat alone all evening, watching the bouquet wither, yet felt warm, thinking my son was busy but still loved me, so even that love had been staged. Andrew was silent for a long time, then picked the notebook up again and flipped quickly. His hand trembled. "Mom," he said softly, "it's all here. Notes about the transfers, a whole plan to manage communication between you and me." I closed my eyes. A cold current ran down my spine. "You know," I said, my voice low, "all this time, I kept thinking it was my fault, that I was too sensitive, expected too much, too selfish to feel abandoned. But in truth, I was just a victim of scripted words." Andrew squeezed my hand. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was blind." I shook my head. "No, Andrew, it isn't your fault. Serena knew how to make you believe. You're a good man, and that's exactly what made you easy to use." The room sank into silence. Outside, the rain grew heavier, drumming on the metal awning. I looked through the streaked window and felt both pain and a strange relief, because at last I knew the truth. No more what-ifs, no more doubting myself. Only the bare truth and a wound beginning to heal the only way it can, by facing it. Andrew pulled a few last sheets from the box. "Look at this." They were a series of utility bills in my name addressed to Coral Gables. "She used my name to register utilities," I said, voice trembling. "So when you checked, everything matched." "Right. Everything was legal to perfection." Andrew let out a bitter laugh. "She's smart, Mom. Too smart." I looked at the black notebook one last time. Between the slanted lines of ink, I saw 3 faint pencil lines almost erased. "Don't let them be together too long. Things break when they start telling the truth." To me, that was the final proof. Serena hadn't lied only out of greed. She lied to control, to turn me into a faded memory in my son's life, so she could take my place completely. I set the notebook down and spoke slowly. "Andrew, this isn't a small mistake. This is systematic manipulation. Not an accident, not a misunderstanding." He nodded, his eyes colder than before. "I won't let this be buried. I want to know what she did with the money, with the property, and with you." I gripped his hand, feeling the warmth of that trembling palm. "If you want to start with the money trail. That's where every lie leaves a mark." Andrew looked at me, a faint, sad but determined smile. "I understand. This time, you won't be alone." I nodded. Outside, the rain still fell, but the thick fog inside me after so many years finally lifted. I knew that from here, the fight to reclaim justice for my family was truly beginning. The next morning, I had just poured coffee when Andrew knocked. He looked like he hadn't slept much. The dark circles under his eyes were stark. He carried a thin folder, neatly arranged as if he'd spent the whole night sorting it. "Mom," he said, voice low, "I need you to see this." He set the folder on the table. Inside were a series of bank statements, lines of text, and steady amounts, $2,000 each month, for 3 years. "This is the money I sent you," Andrew said. "Every month, transferred through Serena's account. She said you didn't want to receive it directly, so I let her handle it." I looked at him, then at the numbers in front of me. Hundreds, then thousands, steady, month after month. In total, $36,000. A chill ran down my spine. I said softly, word by word, "I never received a single dollar of this." Andrew looked up, his face hardening. "That's impossible. She said you used it for Dad's medication and monthly expenses." I gave a small laugh that hurt all the way through. "Dad's medication? I had to sell my wedding ring to pay for it, Andrew, and your father's gold watch. If I had the money, would I have let him go 3 weeks without his meds? People say, you can lose money and earn it back, but trust once lost never returns the same." After hearing all this, I asked myself what hurts more, losing money or losing faith in someone you once considered family? What about you? What part of this story hurts you the most? Write me a few lines so we can reflect together on how to keep our dignity and kindness in a world full of lies. He fell silent. I could hear the wall clock ticking, one beat at a time. "Was Serena the middle person?" I asked, my voice tight. "She received the money for me, then told you I was fine, didn't she?" Andrew nodded without speaking. I took a deep breath and looked down at the papers. Those cold black lines now felt like cuts on the skin, steady, silent, stretching over 3 years without my knowledge. "Count them," I said quietly. 3 years, 36 months, 36 times she took the money without blinking. Andrew picked up a pen and counted each column. Every stroke was a stab to his heart. At the final number, his hand trembled. 36,000, he whispered, then let out a long, exhausted breath. She skimmed it all. I didn't answer. I just sat still, looking at the window where the rain had just stopped, weak light spilling in and reflecting on the table. I thought of the nights Michael coughed until he choked, how I propped his head on a worn pillow and counted the pills left in the bottle. I thought of dinners where I ate a single slice of dry bread, telling myself I wasn't hungry, just to save money for him. And somewhere else, Serena was living in a mansion, dining by candlelight in a silk dress, calling it a life she deserved. Andrew raked his hair, voice breaking. "Mom, I swear I didn't know. I was so foolish. She even told me not to send more because you said that amount was enough. Mom, I believed her." I put a hand on my son's shoulder. "Andrew, I know you had no ill intent, but now we have to be clear-headed. She didn't just take money. She took my time as a mother, and she stole your trust." He looked at me, eyes wet, but determined. "Mom, I'll get everything back. The money and our honor." I nodded gently. "No, Andrew, we'll clarify everything. Not for revenge, but for justice." He opened his laptop and kept checking. "Mom, here besides the $2,000 each month, there were small transfers, medical expenses, housekeeping services, all confirmed by Serena. She even used an email under your name to send payment confirmations." I closed my eyes briefly. "So she staged everything so perfectly that you had no reason to doubt." "Right," Andrew said, his voice dry. "She knows how to make everything look reasonable." I leaned back. a wave of fatigue washing over me. But this time, that fatigue wasn't helplessness. It was the storm front of a battle I was ready to face. "Andrew," I said more calmly, "we'll go to the mansion. As soon as possible. She built a whole world of lies, and it's time to face it." He looked up, a spark of resolve in his eyes. "I thought the same last night. I've contacted a lawyer. We know he'll advise us on the legal framework. If needed, we can go to the police or file a civil case." I nodded. "Good. But before we confront her, we prepare. No arguing, no letting her steer the conversation. Just ask the right questions, take the right facts." I pulled out a blank sheet and wrote the first lines. List to verify. 1. Bank statements for the last 3 years. 2. Mail, emails, texts, cross-check each contact as 3. Utility bills registered in my name at the Coral Gables mansion. 4. Door codes and property insurance. I paused and looked up at Andrew. "You handle the banking first. I'll call Aunt Lillian. She can confirm a few details. We need evidence, not emotions." Andrew nodded. "I understand. But Mom," his voice caught, "how can you bear knowing all of this?" I looked out the window. Sun after rain began to glint, gold reflecting off the foggy glass. "I've endured 3 years of loneliness, Andrew. Now, knowing the truth doesn't weaken me, it makes me clearer." He was silent, as if carving my words into himself. "Tomorrow," I continued, "we go to the mansion. No notice. I want to look her in the eye when I say the first sentence." Andrew looked up. "What's the first sentence, Mom?" I smiled faintly, though my heart was still scraped raw. "It's, Serena, do you know every dollar you took was paid for with someone else's pain?" He nodded and held my hand. "Mom, I promise I won't leave you alone again. I owe you that." I looked at my son, and for the first time in years, I saw not only love in his eyes but awakening the one thing every mother hopes for in her child, no matter the cost it takes to get there. That afternoon, after Andrew left, I sat alone, opened the small notebook on the table, and wrote on a fresh page. "No one can lie forever. One day the truth will find its way to speak." I set down the pen and closed the notebook. Inside, the pain began to settle, making space for something else: agency, strength, and clarity. I have lost too much: money, time, hugs, phone calls. But what Serena cannot take is my ability to rise. Tomorrow, I will walk into that mansion not as a deceived mother, but as a woman who will claim justice for herself. That morning, Florida sunlight poured gold across the roads of Coral Gables, a neighborhood I'd only seen in pictures. Tall palms leaned over stone walkways, white mansions with red tile roofs stretched in a line, elegant to the point of cold. Andrew's car slowed as we turned onto the last street. I looked through the window and my heart sank. In front of us was the mansion where I should have lived for the past 2 years. 2 stories, white walls, Spanish tiles, a balcony draped in bright bougainvillea. A wrought iron gate opened onto a marble courtyard with a small fountain and an angel statue at the center. Every detail was perfect, like it had been cut from an architecture magazine. Andrew eased to the curb and drew a breath. "Ready, Mom?" I nodded. "I've been ready since the day she started lying." He stepped out and pulled a key. When the lock turned, the dry click sounded like an opening line to a truth that couldn't be taken back. The front door swung open. Expensive perfume and vanilla candle mingled with cool air conditioning. On the marble floor, the click of high heels rang out quick, then stopping at the top of the stairs. Serena appeared. She wore a cream silk dress, hair perfectly curled, bare feet but still carrying the regal posture of a true owner. When she saw us, her face twitched, but within a second, she had her poise back. "Andrew," she said sweetly, "you're back? I didn't expect you to bring Mom without letting me know." Andrew didn't answer. He stepped in, eyes like steel. "This is my mother's home, no notice needed," Serena pressed, her lips, shoulders lifting slightly. "This house is in your name. I'm your legal wife, so I have the right to live here. If Mom feels uncomfortable, I'm happy to give her a tour." I drew a breath, keeping my voice even. A tour? No one needs a tour of the place she should have lived in for 2 years. Her smile stalled. Andrew pulled the black notebook from his pocket. The moment she saw it, her face went pale. He set it on the stone counter, thud, a heavy sound dropping into the silence. "You recognize this?" he asked, low and slow. Serena stepped back, lips trembling. "That's my journal. You violated my privacy," Andrew answered flatly. "Not a journal. A record of wrongdoing." She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, I stepped forward. "Serena, do you know the things I demand in life aren't mansions, cars, or a name to flaunt? I only want what you took, the smallest things. A birthday card, a dinner with my son, and money for card. My husband's medicine, when he was dying. That's all." Serena stood still. The fake strength on her face cracked like paint under harsh sun. Andrew looked at his wife, his eyes more disappointed than angry. "Why, Serena? Why would you do this to my mother?" She turned away, voice trembling but still playing fragile. "You don't understand. Mom never truly accepted me. She always saw me as an outsider. I just wanted a place." "By stealing?" I asked softly. "By inventing stories, dividing mother and son, then living in a home bought with love and trust." She snapped back, voice rising. "Because she was always between us. You always talked about her cooking, about how she worried about you." I was tired of living in that shadow. Andrew froze, as if slapped. "So that's it? You were jealous of my mother?" Serena panted, then shouted, "Yes! Because you love her more than you love me." The room seemed to shatter under that line. I stood still. Every secret, every move, every scheme now gathered under one bare reason: petty, selfish jealousy. Andrew stepped back, his eyes hollow. "You destroyed your marriage over that?" Serena clutched her chest, tears falling, but I recognized them not as remorse, but as the fear of losing power. I touched the cold stone counter, letting the chill steady me, reminding myself to keep breathing, keep calm, keep the evidence. "Andrew," I said slowly, "let her speak it all. Let her own words indict her." He nodded, staring at Serena. "You took the money, faked messages, kept me from my mother. What else do you have to say?" Serena wiped her tears, her voice fraying. "You think it's easy being your wife? You're always busy, always talking about work, and when you're not, it's about your mother. I just wanted to be loved." I sighed. "Serena, love doesn't mean taking. You didn't want love, you wanted control." She turned on me, eyes full of resentment. "What do you know about marriage? Have you ever had to fight for someone's love?" I smiled lightly, though the scar inside me had long since closed. "No, because I never had to fight for it. I only had to be worthy of it." Serena bit her lip, shoulders trembling. She looked around the white walls, the crystal chandelier, the polished stone floor, as if everything was turning its back on her. Andrew stepped forward, his voice cold and final. "Serena, you need to leave the house now. This is no longer your place." She widened her eyes, trying to regain her old hauteur. "You don't have the right to throw me out. I'm your legal wife, and this house is in your name. If I want, I can stay as long as I please." "Right," Andrew replied, "but not after you're sued for financial fraud and identity forgery." That sentence made Serena turn pale. She looked at me, as if seeking a little pity, but I only met her gaze with calm eyes. "Serena," I said slowly, "when you took this house, you thought you'd won. but there are things you can't take: the truth, a mother and son's bond, and trust. Those things, no matter how many signatures you forge, can't be faked." She turned away, gripping the stair railing, her voice almost a scream. "You think you're better than me? Fine, but this isn't over. I won't let you take everything from me." Andrew answered shortly, his voice like steel. "No, Serena. You're the one who took everything, and now you're only losing what never belonged to you." She looked at him one last time, her eyes filled with both hatred and despair. Then, without another word, Serena turned and walked up the stairs. The echo of her heels rang through the empty house, slow and heavy, like bells tolling for a crumbling illusion. Andrew sighed and dropped into a chair. I went to my son and set my hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing, Andrew. Sometimes to get peace back you have to dare, to let everything collapse." He nodded slightly, his eyes still fixed on the staircase. "Mom, I don't understand how I ever loved someone who could be that cold." I looked at him and said softly, "Because you have a heart that trusts. Don't let her take that from you." Outside, the late afternoon sun cut through the window, pouring a warm strip of light across the marble floor. I stood still, taking in the house my house, and knew that, from today on, I was no longer the deceived one. Even if Serena swore, "This isn't over," I understood with the truth exposed, this was the beginning of the end for her. After the confrontation in Coral Gables, Serena vanished from our sight as if she'd never existed. She didn't pack, didn't leave, she simply barricaded herself in the mansion, locking doors, pulling curtains, ignoring calls. Andrew tried calling dozens of times. Each time, the cold sound of voicemail played, a wall between the truth and cowardice. 3 days passed. The lights still burned at night, but no one went in or out. Andrew contacted the attorney, and I returned to the old 4B apartment, keeping myself busy so I wouldn't be swallowed by emotion. On the fourth morning, just as I finished brewing coffee, the phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated a few seconds, then picked up. "Mrs. Cole?" A middle-aged woman's voice, a bit husky, slightly urgent. "I'm Rosa Alvarez. I work for a few families in Coral Gables, and I think you should know this." I tensed slightly. "What is it, Miss Rosa?" She drew a long breath. "It's about Mrs. Serena." At that name, my hand tightened around the receiver. "Go on." "Mrs. Serena," Rosa continued, "has lived in our neighborhood for nearly 2 years. Everyone thinks she's a widow. She told people her husband, a businessman named Andrew, died of late-stage cancer. She said the mansion was an inheritance. He left her before he passed." I froze, my heart twisting. "You're saying she told them her husband was dead?" "Yes, she accepted condolence flowers, held a memorial, even put a framed photo of a man on the mantel, said he was her late husband. I remember clearly, she wore a black dress with a shawl, accepting sympathy while smiling softly, saying, 'Time will help me move on.'" I shot to my feet. My lips trembled. "My God," Rosa continued, her voice tinged with outrage. "And that's not all. 2 weeks ago, she hired me to get the house ready for a party. I heard her boast that she was preparing to leave the U.S. for Europe to start a new life. She said, 'I need to escape these painful memories.' I actually felt sorry for her then. I leaned against the table, breathing deep like someone hit by a wave. "Rosa, are you sure? Do you have proof?" "I do," Rosa answered immediately. "I have photos from the party. She even hung a fake wedding photo. The man isn't Andrew. It looks like someone pulled from a magazine. And the worst part, she's listing the mansion for sale." I was stunned. "Listing it?" "Yes," Rosa said firmly. "She told some neighbors she wanted a quick sale because the house brings back too many memories. I heard the names of 2 families who already made offers, even sent written proposals. Mrs. Serena said she'd close soon and move to Europe to open a small fashion boutique. I slumped into a chair. My hands shook, clutching the receiver like it was a thin lifeline between reality and a bad dream. She hadn't just lied to my family, she'd deceived an entire community, casting herself as the lead in a perfectly staged tragedy. Rosa's voice softened with sympathy. "I know you're Mr. Andrew's mother. Everyone here liked Mrs. Serena, so I thought you should know the truth. I didn't want anyone else to be fooled." I choked up. "Thank you, Rosa. Thank you for calling." I hung up and sat for a long time. Images flashed one after another, Serena standing before a mirror, acting the widow, taking condolence flowers, listing a house that wasn't hers. I had never seen such calculated deceit. That afternoon, Andrew came by. I told him everything. He listened, his face darkening by the minute. When I mentioned Serena listing the mansion, Andrew clenched his fist and ground out each word. "She's crossed the line." I nodded, my voice hoarse. "Andrew, do you see? She didn't just deceive me, she deceived the entire neighborhood. She built a world where you were dead." Andrew was silent for a long time. I saw his shoulders tremble. Then he spoke, choked but resolute. "Mom, it's time to make it public." I looked at him, waiting. "I'm going to tell everyone the truth. Family, neighbors, the people who believed her," he said. "I'll change the locks on the mansion, as the rightful owner. And I want you there, to tell your part. She's hidden, manipulated, and lied for 2 years. Now she'll hear the truth not within 4 walls, but in front of everyone." I drew a deep breath. "Do you think people will believe it?" He looked at me, eyes steady. "The truth doesn't need belief to exist, Mom. It only needs to be spoken." In him, I saw Michael calm, principled, never backing down in the face of injustice. That evening, we planned the details. Andrew called the attorney to confirm legal ownership of the mansion, then scheduled a lock change for the next morning. He emailed all the relatives and a few close neighbors in Coral Gables, inviting them to a family gathering over the weekend. "I intend to turn it into a public unveiling of the truth," he said. "The more open it is, the harder it is for her to slither away." I nodded, then opened my notebook and wrote a few lines, not long, just the essentials I needed to say. I didn't come for revenge. I came to reclaim dignity for myself, for my husband, and for the mother-son bond that was nearly destroyed. I added a few lines. "No theatrics, just the truth. Keep calm, keep eye contact." Andrew smiled at me. "You're preparing like someone about to take the stand." I answered, quiet but firm. "Every truth needs witnesses, son. And this time, I won't let anyone rewrite my story." The room fell into silence, broken only by the ticking clock. I felt like I was standing on the threshold between past and present on one side, the long years of deception. On the other, the glare of light, harsh and stinging. Andrew sat across from me, taking my hand. "Mom, when this is over, I want you to move in with me. Not out of pity, but because I want it." I squeezed his hand lightly. "I'll think about it, but right now, we have work to do." When Andrew left, I looked out the window. The sunset reddened the whole sky, reflecting off the old buildings. Part of me felt tired, another part felt a strange vitality returning. I knew what lay ahead wouldn't be easy. Serena would react, maybe scheme, maybe play the victim. But this time I had the truth, the evidence, witnesses, and Rosa Alvarez, a woman brave enough to call me simply because she felt justice should be served. I told myself, sometimes the truth doesn't come from the ones we love, but from strangers brave enough to say what's right. That night, I rewrote my short speech for the upcoming gathering. No flowery words, no blame, just the final line I wanted everyone to hear. When a woman is stripped of her voice, she doesn't disappear. She waits for the day to speak again, with her whole heart and with evidence. I set down my pen and closed my eyes. The fear was gone. I simply saw clearly this was the moment I took my life back. On Saturday evening, Coral Gables glowed under golden lights streaming through the tall palms. The air was mild, but inside me rose a feeling both eager and tight. The front yard of the mansion, once a symbol of deceit, was now filled with people. Andrew's relatives, a few close colleagues, neighbors from around the block, and Rosa Alvarez were all there. Everyone stood quietly, eyes fixed on what was about to happen. The porch lights came on. Andrew stood in the middle of the yard, holding a thick folder. I stood beside him in a simple, dark dress. In front of us, Serena appeared, dragging 2 suitcases, her face taut but still trying to project poise. She wore a white dress, perhaps to look innocent, but her stiff face and heavy makeup couldn't hide her restless eyes. "Are you trying to turn this into a farce?" Andrew's voice was low but carried clearly. "I invited you here to talk, not to put on another performance." Serena set down the suitcases, crossed her arms, and tried to keep her tone even. "What do you want?" "I just want to leave quietly." "No need to blow this up in front of everyone." Andrew shook his head. "No, Serena, these people have the right to know. Because for 2 years, you lied to them." Murmurs spread. I heard whispers. "What's going on?" "That's Andrew's wife," she said. "Her husband died of cancer, didn't she?" Andrew opened the folder and pulled out a few pages, speaking clearly and methodically, like a carefully prepared indictment. "Serena Cole, my legal wife, told people I died of cancer. She accepted condolence flowers, held a memorial, and listed this mansion as inherited property. Here is the title: this house is in my name. She has no right to sell, transfer, or occupy it unilaterally." The buzz rippled like a wave. A few jaws dropped. Mrs. Martinez, a kindly older neighbor, stepped forward, her face stunned. "Good Lord, Serena, I brought you food to comfort you." "You said your husband died of cancer. I cried with you." Serena flinched, her shoulders trembling, but forced a crooked smile. Everyone misunderstood. I was joking," Andrew cut in, icy. "No one. Jokes by accepting funeral flowers and hanging a dead man's photo." "Serena." The air thickened. I could hear the wind threading through the palms, dry and cool. Andrew turned to me and nodded. "Mom, your turn." I stepped forward. The yard went silent. I looked around, faces both familiar and new, people who had believed Serena was a grieving widow. I spoke slowly but firmly. "I am Brenda Cole, Andrew's mother. For 4 years, I lived alone in a small apartment in Davie. I didn't receive a single card, phone call, or check-in from my son because Serena blocked them all." A few people sighed. I continued. "When my husband Michael was dying, I couldn't afford his medication. I sold my wedding ring. Meanwhile, Serena took the money. Andrew sent me. Lied that I didn't want to see anyone, that I was difficult, that I had lost my mind." I paused to steady my breath, then looked straight at Serena. "You said I needed privacy. In truth, you wanted me to second, disappear so no one could verify your words." The crowd murmured. I saw phones rise, lights flickering as people recorded, but I didn't care. Serena suddenly screamed, "You're humiliating me. This is a family matter, not a trial." Andrew answered, calm but unyielding, "The truth doesn't humiliate anyone except the liar." The line cut like a blade. Serena's face went chalky, her eyes darting, searching for a sympathetic gaze in the crowd. But no one looked at her with pity anymore. Andrew raised the folder again. "Here are the bank statements from the last 3 years. Each month, $2,000 was sent to my mother through Serena's account. She kept all of it. A total of $36,000. And here are printed emails where Serena impersonated my mother to confirm receipt." Everything has been forwarded to our attorney. Sighs, murmurs, then silence. Some people shook their heads. Others looked at Serena with a mix of anger and pity. I turned to Andrew, resting my hand on his arm. My son isn't perfect. He believed the wrong person, but he's brave enough to admit it and strong enough to make it right. Andrew looked at me, eyes glassy, then pulled out a bright silver key ring. He turned back to the crowd, his voice clear. These are the keys to this house. They should have been my mother's 2 years ago. Today, I'm giving them back, not just the keys to a mansion, but to the trust I unintentionally lost. He placed the keys in my hand. When the metal touched my skin, my hand trembled not from fear, but from warmth, something I'd lost through years of forced isolation. Serena sneered, bitter. Fine. You win. But remember this, Andrew. I'm still your legal wife. You can't just kick me out of your life that easily. Andrew sighed, his voice steady but colder than ever. No one's kicking you out, Serena. You left on your own the day you chose lies over real love. Serena clenched, the suitcase handles, her eyes blazing. You'll regret this. I answered softly but clear. No, Serena. Regret belongs to those who won't face the truth. She spun around, dragging the suitcase across the tiles, and strode to the gate. The clatter of wheels over the steps echoed into the night like the ending of an old chapter. No one stopped her. Only the wind moved, carrying the whispers of those watching. Andrew stood still for a while, then turned to me. Mom, I'm sorry. I smiled and squeezed the keys. You don't need to be sorry. What matters is you chose the right side. He nodded slightly, tears shining under the porch lights. Around us, a few neighbors came closer, light touches on my shoulder, quiet words. You're so strong. I can't believe Serena did that. You deserve to live here. I thanked each of them, then looked around the yard. This place had once been a stage for lies, and tonight it was a courtroom of conscience. No judge, no jury, only the truth, standing tall, burning bright in the Florida night. As people drifted away, Andrew came over and said softly, I want you to move in tomorrow. This house needs a good person living in it. I nodded, my eyes stinging. Tomorrow I'll come home. I looked up at the sky. The stars were scattered thick, simple, honest light. In my hand, the keys were still warm. Not because of the metal, but because of the mother-son bond buried for years under misunderstanding, now lit again by the truth. And I understood. Every lie eventually has its day in public, like tonight. The first night I stayed at the Coral Gables mansion, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but because the quiet was so unfamiliar it unsettled me. I lay in the large bedroom, high ceiling, white curtains, a comforter scented with lavender. Everything was perfect to the point of foreign. Only the faint murmur of the fountain outside drifted in, steady like a heart finding its rhythm. After a long illness, I tossed and turned, thinking of the years-lost days isolated in the 4B apartment, living on neighbors' kindness, believing my son was too busy to call. Now I lay in the home that should have been mine long ago, but I had to weather a storm to step into it. Sleep came late and fitful, like a shy guest knocking and leaving before dawn. In the morning, sunlight poured through the big window, laying across the polished floor. I got up and threw open the windows. Birds sang as the smell of fresh coffee filled the wide kitchen. It had been a long time since I'd heard the sound of peace. In the first days, I walked loops around the house, relearning how to use a space. I ran my hand along the granite counters, opened the cupboards, and organized each plate. The kitchen was so large, I needed 3 laps to remember where everything went. The reading room next door had shelves up to the ceiling, and the porch looked out over blazing roses. Every afternoon, I sat there where Serena had hosted flaunting tea parties to read, listened to the wind through the trees, and let my heart settle. Andrew visited me 3 times a week. At first, he was awkward, always trying to make up for it in every way, bringing food, fixing the dishwasher even when it wasn't broken, buying flowers, even gifting a pricey espresso machine. I understood that was his way of atonement, but I only smiled. "You don't have to buy me anything," I said. "What I need is your time." After a few weeks, the awkwardness faded. We found our natural family rhythm again, the very thing Serena had tried to steal. Every Sunday, Andrew came for lunch. I cooked the dishes my husband loved: empanadas, paella, and sometimes that old-fashioned stew. Andrew said, "Smells like childhood coming back." The once cold kitchen filled with laughter. Andrew chopped onions while talking about work. I tasted the sauce and scolded him playfully. "My son still doesn't know how to cut onions?" He laughed, warm as the years before lies ever crept in. After each meal, I washed dishes while Andrew sat on the porch, listening to the radio or reading the news. That simple scene was worth more to me than any property. Time passed, and the house began to breathe like a real home. I put in fresh flowers each week, rehung Michael's photo in the living room, and set an old armchair by the window. At night, I lit orange-scented candles and put on soft jazz. Everything in the house began to breathe, and so did I. One day, while trimming roses in the garden, Rosa Alvarez, the woman who had called me, stopped by. She brought a tray of flan and a bag of mint seeds. "I thought you might like to plant these," she said. I smiled and accepted, my heart full of gratitude. If she hadn't called that day, I might still be lost in the dark. We became friends. Rosa taught me how to prune. I taught her to make empanadas. Soon after, I signed up for a gardening class at the Coral Gables Community Center. Every Tuesday morning, I carried my basket there, with women my age or older, sharing about plants, soil, and pieces of our lives. I planted roses, herbs, and vegetables, things I thought I no longer had the strength to start again. Strangely, with my hands in the dirt, my heart grew calm. Maybe healing begins when you dare to touch life with your own hands. In the 3rd month, I hosted a small book club at home. 4 women came, each hurt in her own way. One estranged from her son, one left penniless after divorce, one thrown out by her daughter-in-law. We didn't cry much. We read, drank tea, and shared a little at a time. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. One late afternoon, I saw myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman there. My face no longer carried such heaviness. My brow was less tense. The corners of my mouth softened. The wary look was gone from my eyes, replaced by quiet. I smiled not to hide pain, but as someone who had survived a storm. Andrew still came regularly, but something felt different. He started talking about a woman named Danielle Moore, a nurse at a clinic he funded. As he spoke, I saw a light in his eyes, the light of a man opening his heart after being hurt. One Sunday afternoon, Andrew brought Danielle over. I remember it was drizzling, the smell of damp earth blending with fresh coffee. Danielle stepped inside with a bouquet of white daisies. She smiled, gentle. "I've heard so much about you from Andrew. Today, I'd like to be sous chef, not a guest." I smiled back, taking in her neatly tied brown hair, bright eyes, and simple warmth. Unlike Serena, Danielle didn't try to impress. She was natural, polite, and most of all, she knew how to listen. When I spoke, she set her phone down, looked me in the eye, and nodded lightly. It felt like, for the first time in years, a young person truly heard me. That meal was joyful. Danielle rolled empanada dough with her sleeves up, laughing when flour smudged her cheek. Andrew teased her. She pretended to pout, and they both burst out laughing. That laughter filled the house, the kind of sound I thought would never return. When Danielle left, she took the gardening gloves I'd given her and promised to bring a few small potted plants next time. I stood on the porch watching them go, seeing Andrew hold her hand, his eyes gentle and trusting. For the first time, I didn't feel anxious about my son loving someone new. I felt grateful. That night, I sat down with the notebook I'd kept since my husband passed. I wrote, "Healing doesn't come from forgetting, but from looking straight at the truth and letting time do its work. Community is medicine. When we dare to share our stories, pain stops being a burden and becomes a bridge." I set the pen down and closed the notebook. Outside, the fountain kept running, the water falling steady like the heartbeat of the pen. House and my new heartbeat too. I understood that the past 6 months weren't just a journey to reclaim a house, but a journey to reclaim myself. The woman once labeled senile, difficult, old and weak, now had a voice, a home, her son's love, and a small community around her. I looked up at Michael's photo on the wall and whispered, "Everything's okay now, dear. I'm truly home." And in that moment, I knew I had come back to life. 6 months after that outdoor trial, my life and Andrew's slowly settled. But one chapter wasn't closed yet, the chapter called Justice. One April morning, while I was tending rosemary on the porch, Andrew walked into the yard holding a thick file. His face was calm, but there was a heaviness in his eyes. "The attorney wants to see you this afternoon," he said. "There are a few things to sign and some new findings." I wiped my hands on my apron and nodded. "All right, tell me. What's still unclear?" Andrew sat and opened the file. "We've submitted all the evidence. Serena's black notebook, the emails impersonating you, the listing documents for the mansion, and the bank transfer statements. But the attorney found something else." I stayed quiet, waiting. "Serena opened 2 credit accounts in my name," Andrew said slowly. "She used my personal information, social security, office address, even an electronic signature to take out consumer credit. In total, more than $80,000. I froze. "My goodness, I didn't know," Andrew said, voice dropping. "She did it very cleverly. All the paperwork looked legitimate. When I checked my credit, it finally showed up." He opened his laptop and showed me. Authorized user, Serena Cole, was right there. Along with the spending history, jewelry, travel, a VIP spa membership, even a beauty course in Paris. Looking at those cold numbers, I felt both hurt and tired. Serena had gone far beyond any limit, not just lying about love, but abusing the law and our finances. That afternoon, we went to the attorney's office. Thomas Bennett, a silver-haired man with a steady voice, stood to greet us and invited us to sit. "Mrs. Cole, Andrew," he said, "I've reviewed everything. The bank confirms identity fraud occurred. However, since Andrew signed a marriage record, part of the assets is still considered marital property. Serena will be liable unless she can prove lawful consent." He slid another packet toward us. "Serena's counsel just sent a divorce settlement proposal. She's willing to accept full wrongdoing in exchange for not being criminally prosecuted. If Andrew signs, it stays in civil court and won't go to criminal court." I looked at my son. He didn't speak, just stared at the wooden table, fingers interlaced. "What do you think?" I asked softly. He looked up, eyes sunken. "I don't want to see her in prison, Mom. I just want a clean break for everything to end." I nodded slightly. "Sometimes forgiveness isn't because they deserve it, but because we need peace." The attorney smiled, eyes kind. "I believe that's a sound choice. Her social and financial consequences are already substantial." It was true. After the public reveal at the mansion, Serena's reputation collapsed. Her family, once well-to-do in Palm Beach, cut ties. They quietly sold the condo she had lived in and moved away. I heard Serena rented a small studio on the outskirts of Miami, avoiding people she knew. I felt no joy. There's nothing to gloat about when someone drives herself over a cliff. I only felt a vague weight lift the guilty fog I'd carried for years, thinking I was the mother who broke a family. Justice arrived not with cheers, but with a door softly closing. A few weeks later, the divorce settlement was officially signed. Serena relinquished all property claims, including any share of the Coral Gables mansion. The court recorded, "The house would be for my lifetime use, exactly as Andrew intended when he bought it." When I received the documents, I held them tightly not for their material value, but for the clarity they represented something twisted for far too long. After that, I set new rules for myself and our family. Rule 1. Financial transparency. I manage my accounts independently, keep clear records of every expense, and I taught Andrew to do the same. Never let blind love cloud your judgment, I told him. Real love isn't afraid of transparency. Rule 2. Firm boundaries. I cherish Danielle, the new woman in Andrew's life, but I also keep respectful space. Danielle understands and responds with grace. She always calls before visiting, always asks my opinion about arranging the living room, and never brings up Serena. I know that kind of tact usually comes from someone who's been hurt before. Andrew changed too. He no longer looks for perfect, but for honesty and kindness. He often tells me, "Mom, I don't need someone who makes me feel awe. I just need someone who makes me feel at ease." I smile. You've learned what took me a lifetime to understand. In the afternoons when Florida light slants through the windows, I often sit in the reading room and turn old pages. I don't strike out the memories of Serena because I don't want to forget. I keep them as a reminder. Lies can be gilded, but they always peel under the light. One evening, I sat at Michael's old wooden desk and rewrote my will. Not long, just a few pages. I wrote in the calmest voice, with no bitterness, only clarity. My estate will be distributed by the measure of one's character, not by blood. Whoever lives with honesty will inherit. No one may hold title to or use my finances without my written consent. The Coral Gables home will be used as a community space where older women can learn financial skills and share their stories. I signed and closed the folder. Relief moved through me like a cool breeze. Since then, peaceful days arrived slowly but surely. In the mornings, I tend the garden, read the paper, and sometimes call Rosa to check in. In the afternoons, my book group and I discuss new reads and how to keep a steady heart when life isn't steady. Every so often, Andrew and Danielle stop by with wine and laughter. None of us mention Serena anymore. We don't need to. She's only a name in the past now, no rage, no grudge, just an expensive lesson about truth and trust. One late summer evening, I sat on the porch watching sunset turn the trees red. The last light glittered on the fountain, the same sound that once kept me awake, now lulling me gently. I murmured, half to Michael and half to myself, "We went through the storm and kept our dignity. That's enough." Then I smiled the smile of someone finished with the past and convinced that justice, even late, still arrives on time. On Monday morning, while I was watering roses out front, an old silver car stopped at the gate. The engine sounded rough and tired, as if it had traveled too many weary roads. I squinted in the sun, and my heart dipped when I saw who stepped out. Serena. I knew her at once, though it took a few seconds to believe my eyes. Hair once perfectly styled now hung messy, half dyed in two tones, a wrinkled blouse, worn jeans, heels with scuffed tips. No trace of the woman who used to sweep in wearing expensive perfume and a cold smile. She stood there in the Florida glare, clutching a small purse, eyes hollow and desperate. "Mrs. Brenda," her voice was hoarse like she'd cried all night. "I just want to explain and to apologize." I stayed silent for a few seconds. Water from the can trickled over the rose roots. The sound on the leaves was steady, calm, the opposite of the chaos in the woman's eyes. Finally, I spoke, light but firm. You can talk, but only for a few minutes. I don't have much time left for old stories. Serena nodded and stepped up to the fence. She didn't cross the gate. Maybe she understood that boundary wasn't just iron, but the last bit of dignity for us both. I know I have no standing, she said, eyes down. I've lost everything. Work, family, reputation. I just want you to know, I really did love Andrew. I was wrong because I was afraid of losing him. I thought if I controlled everything, I'd be loved more. I looked at her for a long moment. In that instant, I didn't see the schemer who had once wrecked my family. I saw a lost soul standing in the rubble she created. I answered softly, my voice steady as if speaking to myself. Serena, no words can return the time I lost with my son. The missed birthdays, the ceremonies I sat through alone, the nights I believed I was a burden. But I hope you learn one thing. Real love doesn't require controlling anyone, and remorse only matters when it comes with responsibility. Serena lifted her wet eyes. Do you think I still have a chance to start over? I gently shook my head, not to deny it, but to release the question. A chance isn't something others give you, Serena. It lies in how you live from today on. I stepped back and touched the gate. You should go now. I wish you peace, but there's no place for you in my life anymore. She pressed her lips together, shoulders trembling, then gave a small nod. Thank you, even though you didn't have to. She turned and walked to the car. The door thudded shut like a final period. As the silver car rolled off the stone road, I watched without anger, only with a healthy finality, the last boundary between forgiveness and repetition. I drew a deep breath. The scent of roses and mint filled the air. The weight I'd carried dissolved like morning fog. At noon, Rosa called. Mrs. Brenda. Her voice was bright. I just heard from neighbors your garden was picked as Garden of the Month. Everyone's happy you're our new neighbor. I laughed a real light laugh. Thank you, Rosa. Maybe this neighborhood needed a bit of my old-fashioned touch. No, she said, you brought back something people forgot, feeling safe. After the call, I went back to watering. In the sun, the rose petals trembled, reflecting light like hundreds of tiny crystals. I realized I no longer watered to hide from loneliness. Now I watered to nourish life, both the garden's and my own. In the afternoon, I biked around the neighborhood. It had been ages since I felt it. The wind in my hair, the smooth roll of tires over stone. A few neighbors waved. Some kids shouted, "Hi, Miss Brenda." I smiled back, and my heart felt strangely warm. That evening, I opened my notebook and wrote a few lines. No longer pages of tears and fury, just small notes of simple joy. Today, the roses bloomed round as smiles. I made the risotto, Michael. Loved It's Still Good, even for one. Andrew and Danielle promised to take me to the beach this weekend. I also tried things I'd postponed for decades, signing up for an oil painting class, a baking course at the community center, and morning walks to the nearby park. Sometimes I wondered, if Serena had never come, would I have learned to live honestly with myself like this? A question with no answer and none needed. What matters is I learned how to move on. One night, moonlight washed the garden as I sat on the porch, watching the fountains sparkle. I remembered the early days when that sound kept me awake, stirring emptiness. Now it lulls me to sleep. I murmured, as if talking to myself. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means no longer letting the past steer you. Because forgiveness isn't a gift for someone else, it's a gift I give myself, to live lightly, calmly, and free of old shadows. As I wrote that, I closed the notebook and looked toward the window where the breeze carried the scent of jasmine. I smiled. I'm no longer the trembling woman at that funeral, nor the victim in the little 4B apartment. I am Brenda Cole, the woman who passed through loss, lies, and loneliness, and finally took charge of her own story. And if anyone asks me what justice is, I'll say, justice isn't only the sentence for the guilty, it's the moment the hurt person gets her voice back calm, clear, and without needing to shout. I stood, set down the watering can, and gently brushed a newly opened rose. That red no longer reminded me of blood or anger. It was simply the color of life, the life I reclaimed with my whole heart, with courage, and with forgiveness I don't regret. That afternoon, the Coral Gables sky looked gilded. Sunset spread over the pool like rippling old coins. Saffron from the kitchen drifted across the porch, warm and bright, calling back the memory of peaceful days long gone. I was stirring paella in the round iron pan that had been with Michael and me for more than 20 years. It was his favorite, a dish I still make on special days, as my way of saying the good things never really disappear. A car pulled up. Andrew and Danielle stepped out with 2 bottles of wine and a bouquet of lavender. "Mom, the weather's perfect today," Andrew said, the sunlight on his face making me remember the boy who used to run around the yard begging for a taste of undercooked paella. Danielle helped set the table. She laid the cloth, placed the plates, and smiled when she saw my old pan. "Is this the legendary pan Andrew told me about?" I nodded, spooning out the golden rice. "It's seen more than dinners, tears, and laughter, too. Today, it deserves only joy." We sat on the porch, late light washing the wooden table. A breeze moved through the palms, carrying jasmine and the neighbors' laughter across the street. Andrew poured the wine. "Mom, I want you to tell us more about Dad tonight." Danielle's never heard the full story. I smiled. Michael was a man of few words who always made people feel seen. He wasn't rich, but he was rich in mercy. Maybe what I'm most grateful for is that he didn't have to watch the lies that came later. He left with his honor intact. Danielle was quiet, resting her hand on Andrew's shoulder. "I believe he's proud of you both." I looked at the two of them, my heart full. This house, once the source of pain, was full of laughter again. The soft clink of glasses echoed in the sun-drenched yard. Over dinner, we talked about small plans. Andrew's new branch opening, Danielle's idea for a community health clinic for seniors, and me, I just wanted to plant more flowers, read a few more books, and learn to live a little slower. As the sky turned lilac, I watched the pool catch the last light and felt a quiet peace rise in me. I understood this is what people mean by healing, not loud, not declared, just a full, gentle silence after too much turmoil. I gathered my life's lessons and said softly, as if to the breeze, "Don't let anyone make you doubt your worth. Real love doesn't turn into tally marks. Loving your child doesn't mean subtracting yourself." Andrew nodded in silence, his eyes warm as a fire. Danielle gave my hand a gentle squeeze and smiled. I looked down at the house keys on the table, the little metal shining in the sunset. To others, they're small and ordinary. To me, they're the symbol of dignity and freedom restored. I knew I didn't need to prove anything else. I only needed to live true and let this home ring with the voices of decent people. That was enough. When dinner ended, Andrew helped me clear the table. Danielle washed dishes while I watched the sky shift from orange to violet to black. The day closed softly, no tears, just laughter woven with the wind through the palms. Tomorrow, I'll plant another bed of white roses right by the thyme fountain, not to memorialize anyone, but to thank life for giving me a chance to begin again, even late. I lifted my eyes to the night sky and told myself, the sun sets only to promise another dawn. Thank you for listening to my story to the very end. If you've lived through days of being misunderstood, of silence standing in for understanding, I want you to know this. You still deserve respect, love, and a voice in your own home. We, who have crossed the halfway point of life, don't need to defeat anyone. We just need to reclaim our peace and our worth. Because sometimes happiness doesn't arrive with someone's apology, but with the moment we're strong enough to forgive and move on without bowing our heads. I truly want to know, where are you watching this from? Where you live? What helps you keep your dignity and your voice within your family? Share in the comments. I'll read every line, as if we were sitting together on the porch with a cup of tea, talking about life. If my story helped you see a piece of yourself, please like, subscribe, and come with me on more journeys of healing, where we learn to let go of bitterness and hold our own hearts again.
I had just dropped my husband off at the airport when my 8-year-old son, Liam, suddenly grabbed my hand so hard it broke the skin around my nail. His eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. "Mom, we can't go home. Dad said tonight you and I will disappear. And he has to go far away so no one will suspect him." My heart stopped. I knelt down, held his little shoulders, and tried to steady the breath breaking apart in my chest. He had never lied, never trembled like this. But what made my spine turn cold wasn't Liam's words. It was the tone notification from my husband's text. "Go home as soon as you're done. Tonight is very important." Important? Important for whom? And for what? I realized this was no longer a normal day. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. I am Avery Morgan, recently turned 58, living in the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina, a place I once believed held nothing but peace, late afternoon sunlight, and the sound of children playing in the cul-de-sac. I had just dropped my husband Darius at the departure terminal of Charlotte Douglas Airport. He said it was only a 2-day business trip, one of the many he had taken over the past few years. I held Liam's hand, planning to head back to the parking lot, go home, heat up the chicken soup still sitting in the pot, and try to finish off a long day. But Liam's eyes froze. My steps. He wasn't playful, wasn't chatty, wasn't talking about school like usual. He stood still as if a spotlight had pinned his fear in place, his tiny hand squeezing mine until it hurt. "I heard Dad talking on the phone this morning," Liam whispered, staring at the floor as if trying to recall every word. "Dad said he needs to clear the house, no more obstacles, so he can start over." I listened, but couldn't make sense of it. Each word felt like a rock sliding down a mountain, crashing into the next, sending a violent rumble through my chest. Liam had never said anything like this. He was a sensitive child, observant but never one to make things up. I wanted to reassure him, to believe he misunderstood. But the fear in those brown eyes wasn't something an 8-year-old could fake. I tried to smile, though my voice shook slightly. "You must have misheard, Liam. Your dad makes work calls all the time." He shook his head immediately, sharp, decisive, painful enough to make my heart clench. "No, Mom, I heard right. Dad said tonight you and I will disappear. Dad said he has to go far away so no one will suspect him." My chest burned as if someone had poured boiling water inside it. I opened my phone by reflex, and that moment sent a chill through me. Darius's text had just arrived. "Go home as soon as you're done. Tonight is very important." Important? Important for whom? Important for what? I tried to swallow, but my throat felt packed with dust. For months I had felt something was off with Darius, but I pushed it aside, like a woman trained her, whole life to endure, to keep a marriage steady, the way women of my generation were taught to preserve a family. He started locking his phone, coming home late, blaming endless meetings, strange calls in the middle of the night that he took outside on the porch, whispering, his hand trembling, though he'd smile thinly at me. "Don't worry, it's work." I wanted to ask Liam more, but my throat wouldn't let sound out. I squeezed his hand and pulled him toward the parking lot. I could not let anyone in the airport see how badly I was shaking. "Liam," I said once we were inside the car, "you remember everything clearly?" He nodded without hesitation. "Dad also said they have to do it quickly tonight, because starting tomorrow, Dad will be free." Free. That word struck my mind like a metal bell. I started the car but didn't drive toward home. By an instinct I didn't know I had, I turned the opposite way onto the highway. I needed space. I needed time. I needed to know whether I was afraid of something real or scaring myself. But then my phone lit up again and again. Darius sent 3 more messages. "Are you on your way home yet?" "Why aren't you answering?" "Don't drive around. Go straight home." The tone of those texts was wrong, urgent in a way that made the back of my neck prickle. Darius was usually indifferent toward me. He had forgotten anniversaries, birthdays, everything. He never cared whether I got home on time. I began to tremble. "Mom," Liam whispered, "if we go home tonight, you won't wake up." I had lived long enough to know when a child's fear was real, and a mother's fear, sharp as a knife, forces belief whether she wants it or not. I turned into a residential street 3 blocks from our house. The oak trees cast shadows across the windshield. The quiet was so heavy I could hear my own heartbeat. I shut off the lights, pulled the sunshade down, and looked at Liam. "Baby, I believe you, but we need to see with our own eyes to be sure." "No, Mom," Liam grabbed my arm immediately. "Don't go near the house. Dad isn't Dad anymore." I didn't know which hurt more, that sentence or the possibility that I had slept beside someone who saw our lives as disposable. I exhaled slowly. "We won't go inside. We'll stay far, just to observe, okay?" Liam hesitated, then nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks. I held his hand while driving the long way around to the back street, where the roof of our house could be seen through the trees, but our car stayed hidden. I parked under 2 tall pines, a patch of complete darkness, just a few hundred feet from home, but far enough to avoid being spotted. I turned off the engine, turned off everything. Silence swallowed us. "We'll wait here for a bit," I whispered. "I just want to be sure. Then we'll figure out our next step." Liam leaned against me, trembling. I wrapped my arm around him, holding him close. I once believed I knew everything about life, marriage, safety, trust, but sitting in that old SUV on a dark street behind our house, I felt every belief in my life begin to fracture. Minutes ago, I was an ordinary wife, an ordinary mother. Now, I was a woman praying that what I was about to witness wasn't real, but my intuition, the one I had buried for years, told me things were worse than I imagined. I looked at the clock. 10:04 p.m. Wind brushed against the car windows. Liam held his breath, staring out into the night, his eyes wide as if trying to pierce the darkness for answers. I did not know that in just a few minutes, my life and my son's life would change forever. What I was about to see would not only destroy the home I had built, but reveal the true face of the man I had once vowed to spend my life with. And this was only the beginning. The darkness swallowed the quiet street where I parked. I sat still, letting the cold night air seep through the cracked window, numbing my skin. From the back seat, Liam leaned gently against my shoulder. He didn't speak, but I could feel his quick, shallow breaths. A child's fear never lies. It's so real, adults should feel ashamed for not believing sooner. And in that heavy silence, memories reopened like pages, sharp and unforgiving. I began recalling the recent months, the strange signs that appeared piece by piece, like shards of glass I had stepped over without looking. Darius used to be carefree with his phone, leaving it in the kitchen all day. But recently, he changed passwords constantly, even tilting the screen away from me so I couldn't see. When I jokingly asked, "What are you hiding?" he snatched the phone from me so fast it startled me. His eyes darkened for a split second before returning to their usual calm. "Avery, don't pry into my work. It's not good for you." "Not good for me? Why me?" I laughed it off, like a wife who had learned to keep peace at all costs. But that sentence stayed with me like a thorn under skin. Then one day, he placed a stack of documents in front of me. "Sign these. Tax laws changed. Putting all assets under one name is easier." I stared at him. We didn't have a huge estate, but it wasn't small. The house, the SUV, my retirement account, Liam's savings fund. "Why in your name?" I asked. Darius smiled easily, patting my shoulder like I was a child. "I do everything for this family, Avery. You trust me. Trust. I had trusted him for 10 years. Trusted until trust turned blind. I signed, not out of confidence, but out of exhaustion. When you live with someone who dominates every conversation, sometimes you sign just to avoid another argument. A few weeks later, Darius announced, "I increased your life insurance policy to $2.8 million, just to be safe." Safe. He said it casually, like he was talking about an oil change or checking the gutters. I stood, frozen on the kitchen step, dish towel in hand, water dripping to the floor. Why me? Why not his policy? Why that amount? But again, I stayed silent. Women my age often choose peace over confrontation. I buried the discomfort deep inside, until tonight, when that discomfort returned as a warning. Liam had tried to warn me earlier. He told me about strange men standing outside our home at night, one wearing a baseball cap, watching the house until he noticed movement inside. I dismissed it. "Probably a delivery driver, sweetheart." Liam shook his head. "But he stayed a long time, Mom, like he was waiting." I should have listened. 3 months ago, during dinner, Darius suddenly said, "Avery, I'm not saying this to scare you, but if anything ever happens, don't dig." I thought he meant risky business deals. Now, sitting in the shadows of this side street, that sentence sounded like a threat. Don't dig? He expected silence. I looked at Liam, my 8-year-old boy with messy brown hair and wide, alert eyes, who saw what I refused to see. The man I married was not the man I thought he was. I held his hand, cold and trembling. "Tell me again," I whispered. "You're sure about everything you heard?" Liam nodded firmly. "Dad said they would do it tonight. Dad said he has to go far away so the police won't suspect him. Dad said, we're a burden." I closed my eyes. A burden. 2 words that cut deeper than any knife. The clock read 10:21 p.m. We sat silently. Only the wind through the trees and our breathing filled the air. Each minute stretched painfully long. Liam stayed close, his eyes fixed on our house. He looked older than 8 in that moment. Fear ages children in ways adults can't understand. Darius had stopped texting, but the silence was worse than the messages. It felt like the quiet before an explosion. Then headlights swept across the trees. Liam and I stiffened. A black SUV, no front license plate, crept into the neighborhood. Not a neighbor's car, not a delivery truck, not anything familiar. It moved slowly, as if counting each house. Then it stopped, right in front of ours. Liam gripped my hand until it burned. "Mom, they're here." My breath caught in my throat. In that moment, every faint sign I had ignored snapped together into a complete picture, a pitch black, freezing picture. Darius had been preparing this for a long time. Every detail, every signed paper, every action, every word, all of it led to tonight. And when the two dark-clothed figures opened the SUV doors, I knew that if it hadn't been for Liam's whisper at the airport, we would have become two names in an investigation report. Mother and child died in a house fire caused by faulty wiring. They didn't know we were watching. They didn't know Darius's plan had veered off course. But I knew, with a painful cutting clarity, my life would never be the same again. The black SUV stopped in front of my gate as if it had found the exact address for a mission planned long ago. I lowered myself into the seat, wrapping my arms around Liam's head, my heart pounding like hammer blows inside my chest. In the thick darkness, both car doors opened at the same time. Two men stepped out. They were dressed entirely in dark clothing, hoods pulled low over their faces. They didn't act sneaky like people trying to break in. No, they moved like men doing familiar work, precise, instructed, routine. One of them walked straight to the front door, and then the thing that made me almost throw up on the spot happened. He took a key from his jacket pocket and opened my front door. No picking the lock, no forcing anything, no hesitation. He simply inserted the key, turned it, and walked in like a legal homeowner. My nails dug into my own skin hard enough to sting. I swallowed back the rising nausea. Only 3 people had keys to my house: me, Darius, and the spare key in his desk drawer, a place where I once heard him warn Liam, "Never touch this." There was no doubt anymore. Darius had given them the key. I looked at Liam through the darkness. His face was so pale it looked drained of blood. He gripped my hand, his voice trembling. "Mom, those are the 2 men from this morning. I recognize the way they stand." I didn't have time to ask anything else. Flashlights began sweeping inside the house, cold beams cutting across the windows, sliding along the walls like blades. I shivered. Never had my house, where I once hung our wedding photo, where I cooked late dinners, looked so terrifying. Just a few minutes later, a strange smell drifted out. At first it was faint, like burning plastic or motor oil, but it grew stronger, acrid, sharp, heavy, the smell of something flammable. I inhaled and nearly panicked. It was the same smell I'd caught when a neighbor cleaned out their storage using paint thinner, a smell that clings to the throat, raising goosebumps. The feeling of standing at the edge of a nightmare tugged me downward. "What are they doing?" I whispered to myself, though the answer had already flashed through my mind, clear and brutal. Liam whispered, his voice shrinking, "They're pouring something on the floor." Then the flashlights went out. A horrifying silence fell. I don't know how long each second lasted in that silence. My hands were shaking so badly I could hardly hold the steering wheel. Then suddenly, a flare of orange light burst inside the house, like someone had lit a giant match. My mouth fell open, then a muffled pop. A burst of flames erupted in the living room, so bright I saw it reflected on Liam's face. Fire spread fast like it had been fed fuel, crawling across the carpet, licking the sofa, catching the curtains. Within seconds, my living room, where I had just drunk tea last night, became a roaring pit of fire. I opened the car door by instinct. No, my house! But Liam grabbed my leg, pulling me back into the seat, screaming in panic. "Mom, you'll die! Don't go out!" His cry hit me like a slap, snapping me back. If I ran out there, if I tried to go inside, I would burn to death at the doorway. I wrapped my arms around him, holding his head against me. "It's okay, baby. It's okay." But I was the one shaking uncontrollably. The fire spread too fast, far too fast to be an accident. Within minutes, it swallowed the living room. Black smoke poured out of the windows, thick enough to smother the whole house. Small explosions followed, wood cracking, glass breaking, pieces of the ceiling falling. The flames surged as if assisted. This wasn't dry wood. This wasn't negligence. What had those men poured on the floor? How much? How long before we arrived? Neighbors started shouting. Porch lights flicked on across the street. Someone ran out with a phone to call 911. I watched the scene as if my legs no longer belonged to me. I loved that house. I had hung every picture on the wall, hand-placed every decal in Liam's room. All our memories were in there. But the fire didn't care. It climbed the stairs, then began licking into the second floor, where Liam's bedroom was. My whole body went cold. If I had listened to Darius and brought Liam home early, if we had gone to bed, if Liam hadn't said anything, we would have been up there, and we wouldn't have escaped. We watched the house collapse piece by piece through the windshield, silent, absolutely silent, quiet enough that I could hear my child's heartbeat. Then my phone vibrated. A familiar notification chimed in the smoke-filled air. I picked it up as if holding hot coals. A message from Darius, just a few words. "Sleep well, you two. Text me when you get home." It felt like a cold blade plunged into my chest. He knew we should be asleep. He believed we were inside. He believed the fire would take care of the rest. And now he was sending a message to create the perfect alibi, the caring, innocent husband. I read the text 3 times and still couldn't believe his audacity. I wanted to scream, throw the phone into the windshield, call him and ask if he had any conscience left. But I couldn't do anything. Liam looked up at me, eyes full of tears. "What did Dad say, Mom?" I couldn't lie to him anymore. I handed him the phone. He stayed silent for a very long time, then whispered, "Dad." Knew we would be sleeping in the house tonight. I pulled him into my arms. I couldn't hold back anymore. Tears poured out uncontrollably, but even in that moment, one truth stood sharp in my mind. No doubts, no excuses, no hopeful denial left. Darius tried to kill us, with planning, with calculation, with every step prepared. He wanted to start a new life, without me, without Liam. He wanted freedom, wanted to erase his debts, wanted to live comfortably off my life insurance payout. And if Liam hadn't tugged my hand at the airport, if I hadn't listened, if I had driven home on time, then right now we would be lying inside that burning house. No breath, no voice, no chance. I watched the second floor collapse, the sound of splintering wood like a cry. Black smoke rose into the sky, and the flames reflected on the windshield, painting my face in red as if exposing the truth directly to me. That night, inside the darkness of the SUV, I knew I had stepped out of my old life. I was no longer the wife who tried to preserve happiness by staying silent. From now on, I had only one mission: protect Liam and uncover the truth Darius thought he had burned in those flames. When the second floor caved in, the cracking wood and shattering glass roared through the car windows. It felt like a part of me broke too. It wasn't just a house. It was my last 10 years. The photos, the blanket I crocheted for Liam when he was 3, the old handwritten letters from my parents, all turned to ash. Fire engine sirens grew louder, then flooded the neighborhood, red and blue lights flashing across the rearview mirror like a nightmare pulsing. Neighbors ran out. Some rushed toward the gate of my house, others recording, some covering their mouths in shock. I ducked low in my seat, pulling Liam's head down. "Don't look up, baby," I whispered. "No one can know we're here." He nodded, pressing his face into my shoulder. I felt his hot tears through my coat. My first instinct, like many Americans, was to call the police, to run to the firefighters and scream, "My husband did this! He tried to kill us!" But as soon as the thought appeared, the little bit of logic I had left crushed it. Darius was not a nobody. He was the successful man of the neighborhood, the guy who funded the local youth team, chaired church fundraisers, attended uptown Charlotte charity dinners. He had pictures with the police chief hanging at City Hall. He smiled in the local paper, labeled a proud black businessman of the region. And who was I? A middle-aged wife who had stayed home for years, recently working part-time at a small shop. No money, no power, no voice. I looked down at my phone. The only evidence I had was one message. "Sleep well, you two. Text me when you get home." That message, if presented, would be read as what? A husband checking on his family, nothing more. And the testimony of an 8-year-old, "Dad said we would disappear." Against Darius's expensive attorney and his polished reputation, I could already hear their argument. "Your Honor, this is simply a frightened child imagining things after a traumatic fire." I bit my lip hard enough to taste blood. We had nothing. If I showed up now, Darius could flip the entire story, paint me as an unstable wife, imagining threats after losing her home. I had seen too many cases like that on the evening news. No, I couldn't go to the police, not yet. I wiped my tears, turned fully toward the back seat, held Liam's shoulders, and made him look into my eyes. "Listen to me, Liam. From this moment on, we don't let anyone know we're alive. No neighbors, no friends, no one at all. Do you understand?" His lips trembled, but he still nodded. I just need you," he whispered, "as long as you're here." That sentence squeezed my chest tight. I pulled him into my arms again, took a deep breath, then backed the car out of the dark space between the 2 pine trees. I had to get away before the fire truck lights swept toward where we were. I drove like someone sleepwalking, turning through familiar curves that suddenly felt strange tonight. I avoided the main roads, sticking to small streets, weaving through other neighborhoods. Charlotte at night was gentle like a tired animal. Warm porch lights, seasonal decorations, flags hanging by doorways, all of it the complete opposite of the panic rolling in my chest. Liam began to drift off in the back seat, his head nodding with each bump. The child had just escaped death less than an hour ago. No child should ever have to go through a night like that. I couldn't keep driving without a destination. I needed a place. I needed a name. I needed a hand I could hold when the world had just collapsed under my feet. And then, like someone flipped a switch in my mind, I remembered my father. Not the father of today. The father from years ago, before he died of a heart attack, before his knees gave out, before he sat in the recliner in my living room and said something I had laughed off at the time. "If one day you are truly in danger, go find Carlton Rao." Back then, I answered, "Dad, you watch too many detective shows." He laughed, but his eyes weren't joking. He opened his wallet, took out a small piece of paper with a phone number and 2 lines. "Carlton Rao, attorney, and an address in the Midwood area." He folded it and pressed it into my hand. "I don't trust Darius," he said quietly. "I hope I'm wrong, but if one day something feels off, you call this. Don't ask much, just call." I had kept that paper in my wallet in the compartment I rarely touched. For years, every time I cleaned my wallet, I found it, shook my head, and said, "Dad worries too much." I never thought the day would come when that paper would be the only lifeline I had. Now, in the middle of the night, on an empty road, I switched on the car light and opened my wallet with shaking hands. Receipts, membership cards, old photos of Liam, and then, in a small back pocket, the yellowed paper. My father's handwriting was still clear, leaning slightly to the right. Carlton Rao, attorney with a phone number and an address. I stared at it for a long moment. I felt split in two. One half wanting to throw the paper away and pretend none of this had ever happened. The other half knowing that if I didn't dial this number, I might not live long enough to regret it. I chose the second, half. My hands shook so badly I had to dial twice. The phone rang, once, twice, 3 times. Each ring stretched out like a whole year. Just when I was about to hang up, a low, firm female voice answered. "Hello, Law Office of Rao." I stayed silent for a few seconds. When I finally spoke, my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Hello, I'm Avery Morgan. My father is Dale Morgan. He used to..." The other end went quiet for half a beat. Then the woman's voice sharpened, alert now. "Dale's daughter? You finally called." A short pause. "I'm Attorney Rao, Carlton Rao. Avery, where are you right now?" My heart pounded. My father didn't just talk to this woman once. He had prepared more than I realized. I'm driving, near downtown, my house. My house just burned down. My son and I almost... I couldn't finish. The next words tangled into strangled sobs. She didn't comfort me, didn't gasp, didn't panic. Her voice stayed steady, as if she was used to calls made in desperation. "Listen to me, Avery. Are you alone?" "I'm with Liam, my son." "Is your husband there?" I swallowed hard, answering with a hoarse voice. "No, he's on a business trip out of state. He's the one who wanted us dead." Again, she didn't interrupt or judge. I heard the scratch of a pen on the other end, like she was taking notes. "All right. Avery, listen carefully. Drive straight to the address I'm about to text you. My office is in Midwood. Do not stop anywhere. Do not visit anyone. Do not tell anyone where you're going. Put your phone on silent and absolutely do not call your husband. Clear?" Her tone wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. Yes, I understand." "Good. I'll be waiting there. The door will be locked. Cameras are on. Ring the bell once. I'll open it. And Avery..." "Yes?" "You did the right thing by calling. Dale would be proud of you." I burst into tears the moment the call ended. The road to Midwood felt longer than usual. I merged onto the interstate, then back into smaller roads, following the map's directions. Liam dozed in the back, clutching the stuffed dinosaur he took everywhere. Charlotte drifted past the windows like a slow film. Drive-through restaurants still lit, a few cars at gas stations, neon billboards flickering. No one knew that inside an old SUV passing through, there was a woman who had just lost her home and her husband. Not by death, but by truth. Midwood at night was quieter than I remembered. The area was full of old brick houses, small coffee shops, and family-owned stores. The GPS guided me to a 2-story red brick building on a corner with a tiny brass sign, Rao and Associates, Legal Counsel. I parked by the curb. It was close to midnight. The building wasn't flashy like the law offices on TV. Only a warm yellow light glowed from a frosted window on the ground floor. A camera pointed directly at the porch. The front door had 2 layers, a glass door with a steel latch inside and a heavy wooden outer door that looked sturdy enough to trust. All of that should have comforted me, but in the state I was in, it only made me feel like I was truly stepping into another world, the world my father had feared I'd one day face. I gently shook Liam. "Liam, wake up. We're here." He rubbed his eyes, looking around sleepily. "Where is this, Mom?" "A place where someone can help us." I took his hand and we climbed the steps together. My hand trembled as I pressed the doorbell. In less than 10 seconds, the lock clicked. The wooden door opened first, then the glass door inside. A woman in her early 60s stood there. Dark brown skin, silver hair pulled back neatly, glasses perched on her nose. She wore a dark sweater and jeans, nothing like the polished attorneys on television. But her eyes, sharp, awake, steady, made me feel small, like a child. "Avery?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes, that's me." She glanced at Liam, still clinging into my hand, then opened the door wider. "Come in, quickly. Tonight is not a night to stand outside." Inside, the office was warm, smelling of strong coffee and old books. Files lined the walls. Stacks of papers covered her desk. Nothing fancy, but orderly and solid. She locked the door, tapped something on a control box near the wall, probably the security system, and gestured, "Lay the boy on that sofa. There's a blanket there. He needs to sleep, and you sit here." I did as instructed. Liam curled up the moment he lay down, exhausted. I covered him with the blanket, smoothed his hair, then returned to the chair across from the desk. Attorney Rao sat, clasped her hands, and looked directly at me. "All right, Avery, start talking. From the beginning. Don't leave out anything, even if it seems small." I took a deep breath, and I talked. I told her about the constantly changing passwords, about the property transfer papers for tax convenience, about the life insurance policy raised to $2.8 million with the words, "just in case," about the strangers Liam saw outside, about the line, "if anything happens, don't dig," about the phone call Liam overheard this morning, the whisper, "tonight they will disappear." Then I told her about the airport, Liam's small hand squeezing mine until it bled, the decision not to go home, the black SUV, the key turning, the chemical smell, the flames bursting, and the final message, "Sleep well, you two." I didn't know how long I spoke. Some parts I had to stop to breathe. Some parts broke into sobs. But she never interrupted. She listened, straight-backed, eyes steady, sometimes writing in her notebook. When I was done, the room fell silent. I could hear the wall clock ticking and Liam's slow breaths from the sofa. At last, Attorney Rao leaned back, exhaling long like she'd just finished assembling a puzzle she had suspected all along. "Your father had excellent instincts," she said slowly. "He came to see me about almost 4 years ago." I looked up, my heart jumping. My father came to see you." "Yes. He said he didn't trust your husband. He didn't have major evidence back then, just small things. The way Darius asked about your inheritance, the way he reacted when you wanted to go back to work. But Dale said, his exact words, 'I can't leave my daughter unprotected if something happens to me.'" She stood, walked to a short file cabinet, unlocked it, searched briefly, then pulled out a thick brown folder. She set it in front of me. On the cover, in handwriting, "Darius Morgan, confidential." Goosebumps rose along my spine. "Avery," Rao said, her voice dropping lower, "your father was right. I have a file on your husband." She paused, letting the words settle into the warm, coffee-scented room. "And I'm afraid this started much earlier than you think." The brown folder lay in front of me like it was glowing in the mixed smell of coffee and old paper. My fingers trembled on its edge. I had always thought my father was overly cautious, overprotective. But now, seeing the words, Darius Morgan Confidential, I just wanted to lean back and ask the sky, "How long had you known, Dad?" Attorney Rao pulled her chair closer, placing her hand on the folder, her voice steady like sharpened steel. "Avery, before Dale passed away, he came to me. He said he felt something was wrong, even if he couldn't name it. And he gave me this, with instructions. When she needs it, give it to her." She opened the folder. Thick, aged papers, some yellowed. The smell reminded me of my father reading newspapers in his tiny study. She pulled the first page out and set it before me. The title made my chest tighten. Financial Status Report, Darius Morgan. Not from a bank, not something he provided. This was from a private investigator. My father had hired someone to watch Darius. I stared at the page as if it were a mirror showing me the true state of my marriage. Columns of numbers, and it took me a few seconds to understand what I was reading. "This is debt?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "And hidden debt," Rao confirmed. "Not bank loans, not credit cards. This is gambling debt, debt from under-the-table dealings, debt paid in cash. Dale suspected it years ago, so he hired someone to follow him." She pointed to one line of notes. "Repeated short-term loans at Winston Club. Total of $180,000. I felt as if someone had poured stones over me. Darius wasn't just passionate about betting, like he used to say. He was buried in it. Buried so deep he couldn't pull himself out. Many other pages detailed failed investments, shady transactions, and finally, the thing that made me go numb. 2 years of contact with a local crime group to take care of the burden. I lifted my head, my lips so dry I had to wet them with my tongue. A burden? That means... Rao looked at me for a moment, her gaze neither avoiding nor softening the truth. "You and your son." The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the chair. Liam was asleep on the sofa, blanket pulled to his chin, but just the thought of our names being called a burden made a burning pain run down my spine. Not because my husband wanted to kill me, but because he saw it as naturally as throwing away a broken object. I didn't know how long I was silent. When Rao continued, I realized my hands were clenched so tightly they had turned white. "This isn't all," she said, pulling out another stack of papers. "These documents track the money flow, especially the inheritance your mother left you." I leaned closer. That was the money I saved in our joint account, believing that spouses shouldn't hide things from each other. In the middle pages, it was written clearly, inheritance of $132,000, withdrawn in 19 transactions, completely gone in 18 months. My heart felt like it had been punched. "Oh my God," I whispered. "He spent every dollar." I remembered asking Darius several times why our joint account was lower than usual. He always had an answer ready. Home repairs, future investments, work expenses. I believed him. I believed him because trusting your husband feels natural. Rao closed the file and spoke slowly, firmly. When that money wasn't enough, Darius turned to the only thing left that he could convert into cash. Your life insurance policy. $2.8 million. She emphasized each word. Was enough to clear the debt and start a new life. With someone new. Without you. Without Liam. I burst into tears. Not the choked sobs from sitting in the car watching my house burn. This time, the tears poured out like they had waited a long time to escape my chest. Betrayal isn't one stab. It's 1,000 tiny needles piercing every memory, every family dinner. Every night I stayed up sewing his loose buttons. Every moment he lifted Liam and called him the light of my life. All of it turned into smooth lies. I buried my face in my hands, my shoulders shaking. Liam, sensing something, stirred and opened his eyes. He saw me crying, jumped off the sofa, and ran to me, wrapping his small but determined arms around my neck. "Mom, don't be scared. I'm here." That sentence, on that night, felt like a small hand gripping my soul tight. I held him close, kissing his hair. He didn't understand everything, but he sensed his mother's pain, and that made my anger burn hotter. Rao let us hold each other for a moment, then spoke. "Avery, now you need to stay calm and listen. You have a major advantage. You're alive. But that alone isn't enough to charge Darius. To end this, we need solid evidence. Actions, instructions, transactions, hired men. Everything must be strong enough to bring him to court without giving him room to turn it around." I wiped my tears, forcing my breath to steady. But where is the evidence? The fire burned everything. Rao shook her head. Not everything. Men like Darius are careful. They keep a portion for themselves in case the people they hired turn on them. In the old investigation notes, there was mention of a lock inside his desk. I cut her off, my heart tightening. "The third drawer. On the right. I've seen him lock it, but I never had the key." That could be where he kept documents about the people he contacted. Notes, cash transaction records, a secondary phone, anything. And just one of those things is enough to turn the whole case. I looked at Rao, my mouth dry. "But the house burned down." "Fire burns wood faster than metal," she replied. "A small safe, a metal compartment, or a lockbox could still be intact. And even ashes can speak, Avery. People who stage a crime scene always leave mistakes. The issue is, we must get there before anyone else comes back to erase the evidence." Her meaning was so clear I felt nauseous. We had to go back to that pile of ashes. We had to find what Darius didn't have time to destroy. Liam was still holding my arm, watching me with worried eyes. I inhaled deeply, forcing myself to stay steady despite my racing pulse. "Rao, do you think we can do it?" She didn't answer right away. She folded the file, pushed it gently toward me, like handing over a piece of fate. "Avery," she said, her voice low but strong, "you are not just a victim. You are a survivor. You know better than anyone what's being hidden. You escaped a death he was certain of. You still have your son. The two of you witnessed what no one else saw." She looked straight at me. "If anyone can pull the truth out of those ashes, it's you." I held Liam's hand, squeezing it lightly. Yes, I was alive, and I was no longer alone. That night, in the small office in Midwood, with the hum of the air conditioner and the thick smell of coffee, I understood what my father had probably known for years. To save my child, I had to face the fire, this time with the truth. And the truth was in the place I once called home. I couldn't sleep that night. Even though my body was exhausted, my mind felt stretched like a tight string. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flames climbing the walls, the two men entering the house with a key, the message from Darius lighting up the screen. Each image made my chest seize. Rao didn't force me to rest. She only said, as she handed me a warm glass of water, "Avery, tomorrow night we go back. Tonight he's still busy pretending. Tomorrow night the men he hired will think everything is done." I nodded. We had only one chance to find the evidence. If Darius returned to the scene before we did, he would erase everything. The next night, right on time, we stood at the edge of the small forest behind the houses, where a dirt path ran behind the neighborhood. A path I used only when taking Liam to collect pine cones. Now it was an escape route, a re-entry route, the only route without cameras. Rao led the way, short but solid, her steps firm on the fallen leaves. I held Liam's hand. His hand was so cold I had to rub it to warm it. The thin moonlight through the trees made the path look dusted with silver. "Mom, are you sure it's safe?" Liam whispered. "It's not safe, sweetheart, but it's necessary." I squeezed his hand. He didn't say anything else, just walked closer to me. He had grown up too much since that tragic night, too fast for an 8-year-old. We exited the trail and reached the fence behind my house. The floodlights from the firefighters were gone, and the police had left that morning. The house stood silent, blackened, burned down like an abandoned skeleton. The left wall had collapsed, part of the roof had fallen in, exposing a large gap into the second floor. But just as Rao predicted, Darius's office on the second floor hadn't completely fallen. A corner of the room remained, though the walls were scorched. Rao scanned the area, whispering, "Let's go, no one's watching now." We followed the fence and slipped through the smallest break. The burnt smell in the wind made me dizzy. I didn't know how I managed to walk back into the place that had almost killed me and my son, but my feet kept moving. The kitchen door was mostly charred. The frame tilted, pieces of wood falling as I pushed it lightly. We stepped inside, crunching over broken tiles and thick ash. The kitchen had once been where I taught Liam to make pancakes. Now it was just a pile of black debris. "Move fast," Rao said. "We have 15 to 20 minutes. There was no staircase left to reach the second floor, but part of the railing near the window remained, and the metal hooks still clung to the burnt wall. Rao brought a small climbing strap, something I didn't know why she owned and didn't dare ask. She tied the strap to the remaining wood, tested it several times, then nodded. "I'll go first. Avery in the middle. Liam last. I'll pull him up. Don't look down." I had never felt as weak as I did climbing that broken railing. Each step took both mental and physical strength. Ash slid under my hands. Wind blew through the open roof, carrying the smell of burnt metal and wood, like the night before was still smoldering. When we reached the second floor, the office appeared like a ghost. Darius's desk was burned from the top down, but the lower portion survived. The wall behind it was pitch black, the floor covered in ash, and in the middle of that charred wall was something that made me shiver. Darius's safe had been exposed, the wooden covering burned away, but the keypad still intact. Another thing chilled me. I'd always thought that safe was the most secure thing in the house. Now it sat uncovered like evidence against its owner. Rao signaled for me to hurry. I looked at the numbers, my hand trembling. The one code Darius had ever used, and confidently believed no one else knew, was his birth date. I typed it silently. Click. The safe door opened. Inside wasn't much, but enough to take my breath away. Bundles of cash wrapped in rubber bands, several SIM cards for untraceable calls, a black burner phone charred on one corner but intact, debt documents, some with burned edges but mostly readable. Rao quickly gathered everything into the fireproof bag she brought, checking each item. "This is only part of it," she said. "Darius definitely kept a backup somewhere else." Before I could react, Liam tugged my sleeve. "Mom, here." He pointed to the burnt floor. A square piece of wood sat slightly offset from the rest, easy to miss without looking closely. I knelt, brushed away the ash, and lifted the plank. Underneath was a hidden compartment. My heart tightened. All these years living with him, I never knew there was a secret space under his office. Inside were a rough, old brown leather notebook with lightly burned edges, a thick envelope filled with receipts and handwritten notes, a small memory card. Rao opened the notebook first. On the first page, Darius's familiar handwriting cut me like a blade. Plan. Resolve the burden before October. It felt like someone slapped me across the face. Every loving word, every promise, all looked like ash-covered lies now. Rao flipped through. The following pages listed service payments, initials of contacts, scheduled times for cleanup, deposit amounts, notes saying, make sure no evidence is left. My hands shook over the pages. Every stroke of ink pierced the last thin layer I used to shield him. He's just stressed. He's just different lately. He'll be better. No. He wasn't changing. He was revealing himself. Rao closed the notebook and looked at me, her gaze sharp but not cold. This is exactly what we need. But just as she finished speaking, a sound froze my blood. The front door being shoved open, then heavy footsteps on the burned floor. Someone's here, I gasped. Liam clung to my arm, trembling. Rao motioned for absolute silence, then whispered, "The cabinet over there, quick!" We slipped into a half-burned wooden cabinet in the corner. Only half the door remained, but the darkness hid us well. Ash swirled as I pulled Liam close. Two male voices echoed, familiar ones, the same men who set the house on fire that night. The cops didn't find the bodies. The boss said to come back and check for anything left. No way, 2 people asleep inside, fire like that, they'd be gone. He said he's not convinced, told us to sweep the office again. The office. I let out a breath, my hand gripping Liam's shoulder so tightly, he turned his face up to me, as if trying to reassure me back. Their footsteps climbed the temporary stairs, the sound of breaking wood snapping under their weight. A beam of their flashlight swept across the room, only a few steps from the cabinet we were hiding in. I heard my heartbeat in my ears like a pounding drum. One of the men said, "Hey, the safe is open." "No way, we didn't touch it." "Someone got here first. Watch out. Maybe they're still alive." I held my breath. Rao stayed completely still like a statue. Liam pressed his face against my chest. One of the men's feet stopped right in front of the cabinet. I thought I was about to faint when, "Ah!" A loud scream came from the porch on the first floor. A woman's scream, sharp, chilling, not the scream of someone in danger, but a scream meant to warn. The 2 men jerked back. "Someone's downstairs! Go!" Their footsteps pounded down the stairs. The door slammed, then silence. Rao slowly cracked the cabinet door open. She was breathing hard, but her eyes were still razor sharp. "Move. Now. They'll come back." We rushed across the room and climbed down the rope just like we had come. I lowered Liam first, my arms numb, but my mind focused on only one thing. We had to get out. When my feet hit the ground, I turned to look at the house one last time. The blackened walls stood like witnesses to a crime, and also the place where the truth had been pulled out of the ashes. Rao grabbed my arm, urging, "Run!" We ran through the trail and into the trees. Behind us, an engine started, and headlights swept across the area as if searching for something. If Rao hadn't yelled to distract them, we might not have had a chance to escape. When we reached the parking lot where she had left her car, I leaned against the door, gasping. Liam wrapped his arms around my waist, pressing his face into my stomach as if to make sure I was really still here. Rao started the engine, her voice strangely calm. "Avery, Tonight you found something most people never get the chance to hold, the truth. She glanced at the bag holding the notebook, the phone, the papers. And this truth will save both of you. I turned to look out the window, toward the pile of ashes swallowed by darkness, and I knew. From that moment on, I was no longer the woman who ignored the signs. I became the person who would peel apart every layer of lies Darius had built, using exactly what he left behind in that secret compartment he thought I would never find. By the time Rao drove us back to the office, it was already late. The city outside was quiet, but in my head, I still heard the fire, the breaking glass, and the cold words in the notebook. Resolve the burden before October. As soon as the office door locked behind us, Rao placed the fireproof bag on the table and looked at me. Now it's time to see what we really have. Liam was exhausted, crawling onto the sofa in the corner and curling up in the thin blanket. I pulled it up to his chest, kissed his forehead, then returned to the desk. Rao took each item out. The cash, the SIM cards, the burner phone burned on one corner, the stack of debt papers, and finally, the brown leather notebook. She opened it, and I sat across from her, no longer able to cry, but my heart tightening every time I saw Darius's familiar handwriting. The first page, plan, resolve the burden before October. Below it were short, clear lines. 5,000, deposit for M. 2,500, first payment for the handling team. Meet M at the parking lot behind the old gas station, 9 p.m. Rao turned to the next page. Each page looked like a detailed project plan. Dates, meeting locations, amounts paid, notes, keep quiet, avoid cameras. Nothing vague. Darius recorded everything as if he were managing a project, not hiring people to kill his wife and child. In the middle of the notebook, a line was underlined. Scenario, fire, the perfect accident. Under it were bullet points. Choose weekend. Neighbors pay less attention. Start fire in living room near outlet. Easy to blame electrical short. Make sure wife and kid are home. Use sleeping pills if needed. I fly to another state before 7 p.m. Have email confirmation witnesses. Return as grieving husband, father. The more Rao read, the colder I felt. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was a deliberate murder plan, handwritten and calculated step by step. On the page margin was a smaller line. Remind them. Leave no survivors. I swallowed hard. No more tears, only a raw sting in my chest. Rao flipped ahead. The last pages were short scribbles, messier, as if written in a hurry. Reconfirm insurance policy. Full payout if death by fire. The more the house burns, the fewer questions. Then the line that made my breath stop. The boy must go too. Don't leave problems behind. I stared at the 4 words, the boy must go, still irrationally hoping I had read wrong. But the words stayed there. Straight, clear, cold. Darius didn't just leave Liam to die in the fire. He planned for it, accepted it as part of the conditions. I inhaled, murmuring almost to myself, he wrote it down. Rao gently closed the notebook, pushed it aside, then picked up the burner phone. Now for the rest. She plugged the phone into her laptop. The device powered on despite the burned casing. After a moment, the message log appeared. Many unfamiliar numbers saved lazily as M, T, driver. Rao opened M. A string of short messages. Darius, do it fast and clean that night. No survivors. M. Just let them sleep. They won't know anything. Darius, check to make sure neighbors don't suspect. The closer to the day of the fire, the more specific it became. The The message from the morning of the incident. Darius. Tonight. I fly at 7. Wait until they're asleep. No survivors, not even the boy. My throat tightened. It wasn't Liam's assumption. It wasn't a child overhearing. Darius had written clearly, not even the boy. Rao shut the screen so I wouldn't have to stare any longer. Legally, this is extremely serious, she said, but I want a criminal investigator to give his assessment. She made a call. I only heard fragments of it. She mentioned my father, mentioned evidence of a murder for insurance plan. About an hour later, a man arrived at the office. He introduced himself. I'm Hendrix Walker, private investigator, formerly with the State Investigative Division. Carlton told me about your case. He shook my hand, his eyes direct, his voice straightforward. Rao laid out the notebook, the debt papers, and the laptop, summarizing everything again. Walker read every line carefully. He didn't comment much, just nodded or frowned occasionally. Finally, he looked up. In terms of evidence, he said slowly, we have a handwritten plan, payment transactions to the hired group, messages showing clear intent to kill his wife and child. Context, the fire, his trip out of state, the high-value life insurance. He looked at me. With this, we can absolutely build a serious criminal case, not just at the state level. Federal involvement is possible because this includes insurance fraud and organized crime. I thought relief would come. Instead, I mostly felt tired. Tired because the evidence in front of me both helped me and shattered the image of the man I lived with for 8 years. Rao asked, "But there's still risk, right?" Walker nodded. Someone like Darius will hire an excellent lawyer. They'll say the notebook is just fantasy written under stress, no direct action taken yet. They'll try to separate him from the arsonists, argue that they acted beyond the agreement, claim he had never intended to kill his family. I cut in, my voice hoarse. But he wrote no survivors, not even the boy. Walker nodded. Yes, it's very strong, but a skilled lawyer will still twist it. Talk about threats from debt collectors, impaired judgment, psychological stress. If we only rely on documents and messages, there's enough gray area for them to create doubt. He leaned back, speaking clearly. What we need is a mistake from Darius himself, an action, a sentence, a reaction that shows he knew it was arson, knew it was planned, something he doesn't have time to polish. I looked at Rao. She stayed quiet as if she already knew what Walker would propose. How do we get that? I asked. Walker didn't circle around it. We make him reveal it. Not by confronting him openly with the police, but by letting him believe that you are still within his grasp. I frowned. What do you mean? Right now, Walker said, Darius sees 2 possibilities. 1, you and Liam are dead. Everything went according to plan. 2, he's starting to doubt it because there are no bodies and his men reported the safe was opened. When he becomes certain you're alive and have the documents, he'll panic. Panic makes people try to regain control, negotiate, threaten, manipulate, and the person he's been manipulating for years is you. I started to understand. A wave of discomfort rose in me. You want me to contact him? Walker nodded. Yes, but not as a woman who's fully awakened and ready to send him to prison, as the desperate wife who wants answers, wants to keep the family together, afraid of scandal. He explained clearly. If you text him aggressively or threateningly, he'll shut down, call a lawyer, and say nothing. But if you act weak, confused, wanting one last conversation, he'll lower his guard. He'll say things closer to the truth, reveal what he thinks about the accidental fire, The men he hired, the plan. Rao added, "We won't let Avery be alone. The call or messages will be recorded. If there's a meeting afterward, it will be in public, with Walker's people watching and recording. But the first move must come from Avery's text." I looked at my phone on the table. Darius had been texting nonstop since last night. I tried not to read them, but I still saw the previews flash by. "Where are you? I'm worried sick. Answer me, I'm losing my mind." A part of me felt disgusted. Another part, honestly, still trembled at the thought of facing him, even through a few typed words. "If I text him," I said slowly, "what do I say?" Walker answered immediately. "You will say exactly 2 things. 1, that you're alive, hiding with Liam. 2, that you have seen part of what was in the safe, but you don't understand all of it yet. You want to hear his explanation because you don't want to expose family matters to outsiders." He paused, looking straight at me. "The wording can be adjusted, but the core is this. Make him think you are still the wife you used to be. The woman afraid of scandal, afraid of breaking the family, willing to sit and listen to his excuses." Rao looked at me, her voice gentle but firm. "Avery, only you can play this role. Darius is used to seeing you soft. This time, that softness will be the trap." I stayed silent for a moment. In my mind, I saw Liam holding me during the night of the fire, the notebook with the line, "The boy must go." I thought about this. If we stayed silent, if we did nothing, would Darius stop? Or one day, would he find another way to finish it? I picked up my phone. The screen was still lit, a long list of unread messages from Darius sitting there. I scrolled quickly to the bottom, my hand slightly shaking but my eyes clearer. "Okay," I said, this time not asking anything. "Help me draft the message, I'll send it." I paused, adding one more sentence. "But from this moment on, I'm no longer his real wife. I'm only acting one last time." Rao nodded. Walker nodded too, satisfied that the crucial piece had been secured. On the table, the brown leather notebook still lay there. For the first time in years, I looked at Darius's handwriting without seeing the man I once loved. I only saw the true face of someone who planned to kill his wife and child, and I knew the next part of this story would be the moment he faced what he wrote with his own hand. The night before, I drafted a short message exactly as Walker instructed. "Meet me at Freedom Grove Park at 10 a.m. alone." In less than 10 seconds, Darius replied, "I'll be there. Everything is just a misunderstanding." Walker saw the reply and said only, "Good, he won't have time to prepare." The next morning, I wore a shirt with a recording device attached. Walker placed his team throughout the park. A bird feeder, a jogger, a couple arguing, a maintenance worker, all undercover officers. I was told not to look around too much so I wouldn't give anything away. I sat on the exact bench we'd agreed on. At 10, Darius walked toward me. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes red from lack of sleep, but his posture was still calculating. He sat down and spoke quietly. "Avery, you're really alive. God, I thought..." I cut him off. "You thought the fire had taken care of everything?" Darius froze for half a second. "You're being manipulated by someone. You don't know what I've been through." I placed the photocopied page on my lap, not letting him touch it. "Perfect accident. Living room first. Make sure the wife and the boy are both home." "Explain that." Darius glanced down, then instantly looked up again, changing his tone. "You don't understand what's happening. I owed money. I was cornered. I was trying to protect you and Liam. They took advantage of me. I said directly, "Then why did you text, 'Don't let anyone survive'?" Darius swallowed, then pressed through his teeth. "You have no idea what you're ruining. Everything was planned so no one would suspect anything. You went through my things. You took papers. You ran. You've destroyed the entire plan. I left space for him to expose himself further." "Everything? What plan?" I asked. Darius snapped. "You ruined my plan. From beginning to end, I just needed everything to pass as an accident. If you had stayed quiet, it would have been done. That was the signal Walker needed." I heard a tiny radio crackle somewhere far behind. I stayed calm. "So, you admit it?" "Avery, don't talk like that. You don't know what I had to do to get out." I tilted my head. "By burning the house while your wife and child were asleep?" Darius clenched his hands, his face twisted, half angry, half confused. "I did everything for another chance at life. I had no other way left." I didn't respond, but several passers-by quietly stood up, moving toward us in the predetermined pattern. A calm, male voice spoke behind me. "Darius Morgan, please stand up and put your hands forward. We need to speak with you." Darius turned around. His eyes darted, realizing the people around him were no longer just park visitors. I saw a flash of panic cross his face. "Who are you? I didn't do anything." Darius stepped back. Walker held out his badge. "Special Investigations Unit. You are suspected of involvement in arson, conspiracy to cause serious harm, and coordinating hired individuals to endanger human life. Stay calm." "No, you have no evidence," Darius shouted. I spoke each word clearly. "We do. The notebook and the burner phone you hid." Darius looked at me like he wanted to tear me apart, then turned to run. 2 officers lunged, but he dodged too quickly. I stood up abruptly, not fast enough to move aside before he turned back, grabbed my arm, and yanked me close. A thin knife pressed against my neck. "Back off, all of you," he screamed. The officers froze. Walker lifted both hands. "Darius, don't do this. Put the knife down. No one wants to shoot you." "Shut up," Darius yelled. "She's coming with me. Nobody moves." I felt the blade press a little deeper, but I kept my voice steady. "You're not going to do it. You've never done anything yourself. You always hire someone else." Darius flinched. An instinctive reaction. That split second was enough. A short, sharp crack rang out. Darius screamed, dropping the knife. He grabbed his wrist, blood trickling. Officers immediately pinned him to the ground, handcuffing him. I was pulled backward. Darius was still shouting, "You'll all pay! Avery, say something! You know I didn't mean—" I watched as he was shoved face down on the concrete, legs kicking uselessly. No confidence left, no calm, no charming mask he used to fool everyone. A female officer read the rights. "You have the right to remain silent." Darius looked around, seeing everyone staring at him. No sympathy, no surprise, only the eyes of people witnessing the bare truth of who he really was. I stood still. No mercy, no explanation, no stepping in. In that moment, I realized, from now on, I don't belong to fear anymore. Walker approached, his voice steady and sure. "You did very well, Avery. Everything he said was recorded. He's not getting out of this." I only nodded. There was nothing more to say. Darius was dragged past me, still yelling, "Avery, you'll regret this. Listen to me." I turned away. He no longer had the right to touch a single second of my life. For the first time in years, I saw Darius completely powerless. No control, no excuses, no chance to perform as the doting husband. Only the truth, and the truth finally stood on its own. Darius's arrest right there in the park immediately opened the path for a federal investigation. The evidence from the safe, the burner phone, and the notebook was submitted to the prosecutor the same day. Walker said briefly, "With this much, he's not getting out." Right after, a wider search warrant was issued. Investigators collected more bank transaction data, credit card statements, life insurance records, and loan records in Darius's name. Everything matched the notebook entries. The two hired men were arrested early the next morning. One of them confessed immediately. "He gave us the house key. He said his wife and kid would definitely be home that night. He said make it look like an electrical short. He paid half up front. The rest after the insurance payout." The statement was fully recorded with a court-appointed attorney present. The prosecution kept everything. Darius's lawyer immediately requested a meeting to negotiate. Rao said plainly, no amount of money can undo what he did. They were forced to bring the case to trial. The trial opened within 2 months. Darius appeared in an orange prison jumpsuit, hair trimmed, face tight with tension. His legal team argued mental instability, pressure from criminal groups, and requested a psychological evaluation. The prosecutor read a list of 14 charges aloud to the entire courtroom: first-degree attempted murder, 2 counts of intentional arson, insurance fraud, federal conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, association with organized crime, asset concealment, witness intimidation, and several smaller counts. Darius's lawyers fought back. Our client was under financial duress, psychologically unstable, and threatened. The notes in the notebook were imagination, not actual conduct. The prosecutor displayed the text messages on the large screen. "Don't let anyone survive. Not even the boy." The courtroom went silent. A financial expert testified next. He laid out every transaction, every cash withdrawal, every deposit into underground casinos. Most of the money flowed from the family joint account to Darius's personal accounts, then into intermediary accounts used by criminal groups. "This is not the behavior of someone coerced," he concluded. "This is a deliberate, months-long operation." A representative from the insurance company testified afterward. He was the one who asked to raise his wife's life insurance payout from $1 million to $2,800,000, and he asked very detailed questions about payout procedures for deaths involving fire. The prosecutor asked, did he seem frightened or coerced during these conversations? No, he was calm. Asked many technical questions, not someone being cornered. The second hired man, the one waiting outside the night of the fire, was called to testify as well. He said, "He told us his wife was weak, slept easily. The kid wouldn't run in time. He just needed us to do the rest." Darius's attorney tried. "You could be lying to reduce your sentence?" He answered, "I'll take responsibility for what I did." But he gave the key. He set the timing. He chose the day. "I don't need to make things up. I only had to testify once." Rao instructed me to keep my statement brief. The prosecutor, "Can you recount the night of the incident?" I gave a short version. Liam's warning, the sound of the door opening, the smell of gasoline, the fire, the message, "Sleep well, you two," and how I had to hide in the dark watching my own house burn. His attorney asked, "Are you sure you're not exaggerating?" In a state of panic, memory can be distorted. I replied, "The court doesn't need an explanation of my emotions. The court only needs the truth of what I saw." No one mentioned bringing Liam to testify. He was too young. It wasn't necessary. A psychologist appeared at Darius's request. He talked about stress, financial crisis, disordered state. The prosecutor asked exactly one question. At any point, did you see the defendant lose the ability to distinguish right from wrong? The doctor was silent for a few seconds, then said, "No." At that point, the defense strategy was nearly collapsing. His attorney shifted to a different angle. Our client did not want to harm his wife and child. He only wanted to stage a fire to collect insurance money. The hired men went too far. The prosecutor responded by playing the arsonist's recorded statement, "Don't let anyone survive. There are 2 people in the house. Do it fast. Leave no trace." No one said anything further. On the sentencing day, the courtroom was unusually quiet. I was not present. I sat in Rao's office watching the live broadcast. Liam was in the next room playing with her son. The judge read the sentence. The defendant, Darius Morgan, is sentenced to 28 years in federal prison, not eligible for early parole. All major charges are upheld. Court adjourned. There was no applause, no protest, only his attorney standing to request the right to appeal. The judge nodded, expression unchanged. Walker called me. He has no room to maneuver. Even if he appeals, it won't reduce much. You and Liam are safe now. I answered, "I understand." Rao placed a photocopy of the ruling in front of me. "It's over, Avery. From here on, your life belongs to you and your son." That evening, I put Liam to bed. I said briefly, "The court ruled. Your father will be gone for a very long time." Liam asked, "Will we ever see him again?" I shook my head. "No, you don't need to." He nodded softly, not scared, not shaken, just calm, as if he finally understood that the worst had passed. I turned off the lights. The room was silent. No crackling fire, no door bursting open, no footsteps of a stranger. Only the breathing of the child I had protected by every possible means. A dark chapter had closed, by law, by truth, by evidence that could not be denied. And the next chapter, the one without Darius, finally began. After the trial, I started putting the rest of my life back together as quickly as I could. The house had turned to ash. All documents, belongings, memories were gone. I went with Rao to the social services office to complete temporary assistance paperwork. A week later, I found a small rental house in a quiet neighborhood in Matthews. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a front yard just big enough for Liam to plant a few pots of flowers. There wasn't much to move in. A few donated clothes, a cheap wooden bed, a used dining table from a secondhand store. But the house had solid locks, bright windows, and friendly neighbors. That was enough. Liam began therapy every Monday. During the first session, he said nothing. But by the 3rd week, he started speaking a little. His therapist told me, "The key is a safe environment. Your son is recovering at the right pace." I nodded. Nothing more needed to be said. I joined a support group for women experiencing domestic violence at Rao's suggestion. There, I met many people with stories more horrifying than I imagined. When it was my turn to speak, everyone listened without interrupting, without asking uncomfortable questions. An older woman held my hand and said, "You survived. Now you can help others." After the meeting, the group coordinator invited me to volunteer as a support worker. I was surprised. I've never done this kind of work. She replied, "You don't need experience. You only need your own truth." From then on, I spent several days a week answering calls on the hotline. Many women called in panic. Many just needed to hear the words, "You're not alone." I said that sentence many times. One day, Rao visited my home. She looked around the small room and said, "Avery, I don't think you're just a survivor. You have a very clear way of arguing, of asking questions, of defending your point. You should consider studying law." I laughed. I'm 34, starting almost from nothing. Isn't it too late to study law?" "It's not too late," Rao answered. "You have motivation many students don't. You understand the value of justice through your own experience." She placed the application packet for an evening pre-law program at a community college in front of me. "You don't have to decide now, but I think you should try." That evening, I opened the first page of the introductory law book she gave me. Liam sat beside me, doing his math homework. We were both silent, each pursuing our own goal but sharing the same old table. The following week, I applied. During the interview, the instructor asked, "Why do you want to study law?" I replied simply, "Because I know what happens when women don't have a voice of their own." He nodded. "That's enough." On the first night of class, I felt a little out of place seeing most students nearly a decade younger than me. But the instructor began with, "Here, age gives neither advantage nor disadvantage. Knowledge is where everything begins." I opened my notebook and wrote down every line. Our lives gradually stabilized. During the day, I worked part-time at Rao's office, helping organize files, answering calls, learning to draft basic forms. In the evening, I attended class. I came home close to 10, but I still read a few more pages before sleeping. Even though he was young, Liam understood the new schedule. "When you finish school, what will you do?" he asked. "I want to help people like me." "Like Ms. Rao?" "Something like that." He just nodded and said, "I'll do my homework next to you so you won't be lonely." From then on, every night he pulled up a chair beside me, reading or coloring. About 6 months later, I was officially invited to work part-time as a legal assistant. Rao said, "I'm not giving you special treatment. You're good at this, that's all." I thanked her. Not for the job, but because she showed me I could go farther than I ever thought. Liam began sleeping better, the nightmares almost gone. I no longer flinched at every sound near the door. The mornings when the two of us had breakfast in the small kitchen, sunlight hitting the table, they were simple but unmistakably peaceful. One evening, while I was preparing class notes, Liam suddenly said, "Mom, I think our house is safe now." I turned to him. "Why do you think so?" "Because I don't hear Dad anymore." I gently squeezed his shoulder. No explanations, no corrections, just accepting that he had come a long way. A year after moving, I spoke at a conference on domestic violence prevention. When I finished, a young woman came to me, eyes filled with tears. "Because of you, I had the courage to leave last night. If you could do it, I can too." That was all I needed to hear. That night, I came home late. Liam was already asleep. I set my bag on the table and looked around the small house. Not luxurious, not fully furnished, but everything in it was my choice. I sat down, opened my book, and continued writing my essay for constitutional law class. Every line, every note, every recorded lecture reminded me that this new life was moving in the right direction. No more shouting, no more threats, no lingering smell of smoke in my memory. Only the two of us, and a path opening ahead. A life rebuilt from ruins, but steady, clear, and determined by me alone. It was the first time in years that I understood what peace truly meant. 3 years passed faster than I expected. Studying law, nights staying up until 2 a.m. taking notes, the internships assisting Rao, it added up to an opportunity I never imagined I would have. The morning I received the exam results, I opened my email in the small kitchen. Only one line. "Congratulations, you passed." I froze for a few seconds. No crying, no cheering. I just exhaled hard, closed the laptop, and picked up the phone to call Rao. "I passed." "I knew you would," Rao replied. "Come to the office tomorrow to complete the onboarding. We have work to do." The next day, I officially signed with Rao and Associates as a new attorney. No big celebration, no party. Rao simply handed me a file. "Your first case. A mother of 2, abusive husband, restraining order violated. You'll come with me for the interview." I nodded. The first case led to the second, then the third. Most of them were women facing financial control, threats, manipulation, or stalking. Many brought their children, holding them tight as if they were the only solid thing left. During consultations, when they said, "I don't know where to go," he said, "If I leave, I'm scared my kids will be hurt." I responded with short, clear sentences, just as Rao taught me, "We'll protect you. There are legal ways to stop him. You and your children are not alone." No one in the room knew my past except Rao and Walker, but every time I said, "You're not alone," I knew the words were not only for them, they were also for the version of me 3 years ago, the one who sat trembling in the night watching my house burn. Liam is now 12. He's taller, his voice deeper, his eyes steadier. He no longer panics at loud noises or startles when someone knocks. He still goes to therapy once a month as part of his recovery, but the doctor says he has surpassed expectations. One afternoon, I came home from work and saw Liam wrapping a small gift box. "What's that, sweetheart?" I asked. Liam handed me the box. "A gift for you. Congratulations on becoming a lawyer." I opened it. Inside was a metal keychain shaped like a book. Engraved on it were the words, "For the strongest woman I know, Liam." I couldn't speak for a few seconds. Liam looked at me and smiled. "You know, I'm really proud of you, Mom." I placed the gift on my desk. Simple, but probably the most valuable thing I had ever received. Work at Rao's office grew heavier. I handled cases involving women and children, exactly the group I understood best. Not because I wanted to revisit my past, but because I had an advantage. I recognized signs of abuse even when the victim didn't say them out loud. I knew when they were hiding something, when they wanted to withdraw a report but were actually terrified. One day, Rao called me into the conference room. "Avery, would you be interested in leading the training session for the volunteer group?" "Me?" "Yes. You're persuasive, and you understand how to talk to women who are being controlled." I accepted. During the first training session, I stood in front of about 30 volunteers. I didn't tell my story in detail. I only used real situations, steps for processing cases, templates for restraining orders, and how to contact shelters. I spoke slowly, clearly, without dramatizing anything. At the end of the session, a middle-aged woman came to me. "You speak differently from the lawyers I've met. Shorter, more decisive," I replied, "because I know delays sometimes cost lives." She stayed silent for a moment, then nodded firmly as if something finally made sense to her. A year later, I was assigned the most complex case, a mother and her 9-year-old daughter who had fled from another state. The husband was hunting them, had money, had connections, and was extremely dangerous. Rao said, "I want you to take this. You handle crises well." We met the mother and daughter in a shelter. The little girl held her mother's hand tightly, her eyes wide and alert. The mother spoke softly. "I don't know who to trust anymore." I handed her my office card. "Start with me." We immediately filed for protective orders, coordinated with local police, and arranged to transfer the case across state lines. During that time, I prepared the documents for the court to issue temporary orders as fast as possible. 3 weeks later, the court approved a long-term restraining order. The mother hugged her child, and the little girl turned to me. "What do you do for work?" I smiled. "I protect people like you and your mom." That was the moment I understood that everything I had gone through wasn't only to survive. It was so I could stand where I stood that day. One late evening, while I was preparing a presentation for a legal conference, Liam walked over and leaned against the doorway. "Mom, are you tired?" "A little," I said. "But I'm okay. Why aren't you asleep?" Liam came closer and looked at the stack of documents. "You've helped so many people. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to do." I looked at him. 3 years earlier, he used to hide behind my back in fear. Now he was the one reminding me of the purpose I was following. "You've changed a lot too, Liam." "Because you're strong, so I know I'll be okay too." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I just placed my hand on his head. Looking back, I realized something I had never said out loud. I was becoming the person I had needed that night at the airport, the night the house burned, the night I first hid in Rao's office. Someone who knows how to listen, someone who knows the law, someone who knows when to say, "Leave now," and someone who stands in the dark and lights the way out for others. On the day I signed the contract to officially become an associate attorney at the firm, Rao said to me, "You've gone far beyond anything Dale ever hoped for, and I think he would be proud." I replied, "I'm only trying not to waste the opportunity he left for me." Rao smiled, "No, you're creating opportunities for others." My new life didn't have dramatic or glamorous moments. It only had long workdays, late nights of studying, thick case files, and the sound of Liam's footsteps in the hallway of our small home. But it was what I chose, what I built, what I protected. I knew I had stepped out of the darkness, and I knew I would help pull many others out with me, because if I could survive, they could too. And that was the only promise I wanted to keep. Forever. 5 years after the fire, my sons and my life had changed so much that if I didn't look back at the old legal documents, I might not believe what we had lived through. The small rental house had been replaced by a light blue home I bought with my own savings, and a support grant for attorneys specializing in domestic violence cases. The house wasn't big, but it was bright, safe, and quiet enough that every morning I heard Liam calling Mom instead of the sound of fire alarms. Liam was 13, almost up to my shoulder, smiling often, and fond of saying, "Mom, I can do it myself, don't worry." He still saw a therapist every 3 months as a mental health checkup. His nightmares had gone from weekly to only a few times a year, and then almost disappeared. The therapist said, "Stability is the best medicine. Your son is on the right track." I nodded. No further explanation needed. 3 times a week, I led the victim support group at the community center. The women who came all shared something in common: cautious eyes, soft voices, and hands gripping their bags as if that was the only thing they still controlled. I didn't tell my story right away. I just sat beside them, offered water, and let them choose their own moment to speak. One Friday afternoon, the center was busier than usual. A young woman sat across from me, shaking so much she had to hold her cup with both hands. When I asked, "Are you safe now?" she only nodded and then burst into tears. I handed her tissues and said simply, "We start from here. You already did the hardest part, stepping out." That sentence wasn't poetic encouragement. It was a truth I had once learned with my own life. At the end of October, right after I finished a meeting with the federal attorneys about expanding a hotline for minors, Liam stood at the office door. "Mom, are you done?" I packed the files, locked the cabinet, and walked outside with him. The late afternoon sun lit the freshly cut grass, and he carried 2 cups of homemade juice. We had barely sat on the wooden steps when Liam suddenly asked, "Are you happy, Mom?" I turned to look at him. It wasn't a random question from a kid. He meant it seriously, like he needed to be sure of something. I answered with the simplest truth. I am. More than I ever thought I could be. Liam nodded, smiled, and rested his head on my shoulder for a moment. He didn't say anything else, but I understood. He just needed to know I was okay. And that allowed him to grow up without fearing the past coming back. My first case of the new year was protecting a mother of 2 who was being threatened by her husband. When I stood in court, I didn't shake anymore. I no longer felt like a victim trying to regain balance. I stated each clause clearly, cited each statute, filed for an emergency protective order, and presented the recorded evidence. The judge asked, "Attorney Avery, what do you propose to ensure the safety of the 2 children?" I answered immediately, "Transfer them to a shelter within 24 hours and request that the court allow police checks whenever needed during the first 30 days. When the hearing ended, the mother hugged me and said something I never forgot. "If I had met someone like you earlier, I wouldn't have been afraid for so long." I only replied, "Well, you've met me now, and I won't let anyone hurt you again." My life stayed busy, but it no longer felt like running. I knew I had passed the darkest point of my life when I could name everything calmly, without avoiding it, without trembling. One evening, while I was reviewing materials for a seminar, Liam came in and placed his hand on my shoulder. "Mom, if you hadn't run back then, I don't know where we'd be now." "But I did run," I said. "And now we're here." "I think you're stronger than anyone I know." "I only did what I had to do, Liam." "No, you did more than that." I looked at my son, the boy who once clung to me in fear at the airport, now standing steady in front of me, peaceful and grounded. I realized something I had never said aloud. I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore, because I had walked through it once and I knew the way out. In the 5th year after the tragedy, I organized a gathering for the victim support group. For the first time, I told my story fully, without avoiding anything. When I finished, the room was silent for a few seconds. Then one woman stood and clapped, then another and another, until the entire room stood. I didn't add anything. I didn't need to. I just bowed my head in thanks. At that moment, I understood that my story no longer belonged only to me. It belonged to every woman searching for a way out. I knew there would always be someone who needed to hear it, and I was ready to tell it whenever needed. Thank you for staying with me to these final lines. I don't know where you're from, what stage of life you're in, or whether you've ever faced darkness. But thank you for taking the time to listen to the story of a mother who almost lost everything. If you have thoughts, memories, or anything you want to share, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your story. And if you'd like to join me on future journeys, remember to like, subscribe, and follow so you won't miss any upcoming stories. Thank you sincerely. I wish you peace always.